The letter found Mara Reed on a Tuesday morning, while she was wearing one of her sister's old college t-shirts and trying to decide whether coffee creamer could spoil badly enough to kill a person. It was certified, thick, and addressed to her at Kelsey's house, even though Mara had never officially lived there. Inside was a notice from an Arkansas law office, a copy of a will, and 3 photographs of 68 acres she had apparently inherited from a woman named Lenora Vale. In the first photograph, brown water covered a field all the way to a line of pecan trees. In the second, the roof of a pump house rose from the flood like the cabin of a sinking boat. The third showed a washed-out road disappearing beneath the same water. Kelsey leaned over Mara's shoulder. "Is that a farm?" "Technically, it may be a lake." Their mother walked in carrying a sack of groceries. Mara turned the letter around and said, "Do either of you know a Lenora Vale?" A jar of spaghetti sauce slipped through Diane's hands. It hit the linoleum without breaking, rolled beneath the kitchen table, and stopped against Mara's bare foot. Diane did not look down at it. "Where did you get that name?" The question came out so quietly that Kelsey stopped laughing. Mara had spent most of the previous 6 weeks on Kelsey's fold-out sofa, where the middle support bar pressed a permanent opinion into her spine. She had been laid off when the company that owned the apartment complex sold it to investors from Dallas. The new owners brought their own maintenance crew, their own leasing staff, and, judging by the speed with which they painted the brick gray, their own deep hostility toward color. Mara's final check had covered 1 truck payment, part of her phone bill, and a dinner at a Mexican restaurant where she told Kelsey everything would be fine. Since then, fine had become a flexible word. She picked up the spaghetti sauce and set it on the table. "It came in the mail," she said. "I can see that." Then we're both caught up. Diane's eyes moved over the law firm's name, the Arkansas return address, and finally the photographs. She had a habit of pursing her mouth when something displeased her. This was different. The color had drained from the soft skin around her lips. Kelsey pulled out a chair. "Mom?" Diane put the groceries on the counter. A carton of eggs sat sideways on top of a loaf of bread. She corrected neither one. "What exactly does it say?" she asked. Mara read from the first page. "The late Lenora Vale devised to Mara Diane Reed all land described as the southern parcel of the Vale agricultural property, totaling approximately 68 acres, together with any fixed structures." "Stop." Mara lowered the paper. Kelsey looked between them. "Okay." That was a pretty dull sentence to stop on. Diane reached for the letter, but Mara pulled it back before she touched it. The move was small, almost childish, and it surprised all 3 of them. "You know her," Mara said. "I knew of her." That is what people say when they knew somebody and don't want follow-up questions. It was a long time ago. How long? Diane turned to the groceries and began putting them away with unnecessary care. She placed the eggs in the refrigerator, then stood staring into it as if the correct answer might be behind the mustard. Kelsey retrieved the bread before their mother could refrigerate that too. "Lenora was connected to your father," Diane said. Mara waited. Her mother shut the refrigerator. "That's it? That's enough for right now." "No, it's actually the first new fact I've gotten about him in about 20 years. You know about your father? I know he played guitar badly, hated steady work, and left before I was born. And I'm not even sure about the guitar anymore. He did leave. Did he leave with Lenora?" Diane's face tightened. "No." "Was she his sister?" "No." "His mother?" "No." "His parole officer?" "Mara." That one would at least explain the mystery. Kelsey pressed her lips together, failing to hide a smile. Diane noticed and gave her a look that had survived both daughters' adulthood without losing force. Then she turned back to Mara. "You should refuse it. The woman left me 68 acres. She left you 68 acres of water. The county assessor calls it farmland. The county assessor isn't standing in it." Mara tapped the photographs against the table. "Why would a woman I've never met put me in her will?" Diane picked up the reusable grocery bags and folded each one into a hard square. Some people like to reach into your life after they're gone. It makes them feel powerful. Dead people don't feel powerful. You know what I mean? "No, I don't." Diane's hands stopped. For a moment, Mara thought she might finally say something true simply because she had run out of places to put it. Instead, she pushed the folded bags into a drawer. "Anything connected to that family will cost you more than it's worth." That family. Mara caught the words, but Diane was already collecting her purse. "Where are you going?" Kelsey asked. "I have a dental cleaning." "You brought groceries to our house on your way to a dental cleaning?" "I was nearby. You live 40 minutes away." Diane lifted her keys. "Do not sign anything, Mara. Promise me. I'm 29. That has never prevented you from making a decision in under 4 minutes." It was exactly the kind of remark Diane had always delivered with weary affection, a private family joke about Mara's bad instincts. This time, it struck differently. Mara thought of every boyfriend her mother had compared to the father she barely remembered being told about. Every job change greeted with the warning that restlessness was in her blood. "Did Lenora know him?" Mara asked. Diane opened the front door. "Mom." Her mother paused without turning. "Did she know my father?" "Yes," Diane said. "She knew him." Then she left. The dental cleaning turned out to be fictional. Kelsey discovered this by calling Diane's dentist, which Mara considered an alarming use of a lunch break. "You impersonated her?" Mara asked. "I didn't impersonate anybody. I said, 'Hi, I'm calling about Diane Reed's appointment.' And the receptionist said, 'She doesn't have one.' People volunteer things when you sound busy." They were sitting at Kelsey's kitchen table, with the will spread between an unpaid electric bill and a catalog full of patio furniture Kelsey could not afford. Kelsey worked remotely handling insurance claims and wore a headset all day. Even without it, she spoke as though a supervisor might be monitoring for dead air. "Call the lawyer," she said. "I did. And she's calling back." "What kind of farm is it?" "A wet one." Kelsey pushed the photograph aside. 68 acres could be worth something. It has back taxes. How much? 4,000 and change. Kelsey's enthusiasm dimmed but did not die. Land is land, so is a landfill. Do you have to do that? Do what? Take every good possibility and mug it in an alley? Mara looked toward the living room, where her duffel bag was tucked behind the sofa. Kelsey had never asked her to hide it. Mara had done that herself after the third day, when it became clear that she was not merely visiting. "I'm being realistic." "No, you're being Mom." That landed harder than Kelsey intended. She busied herself aligning the pages of the will. Mara's phone rang before either of them could decide whether to apologize. The Arkansas number belonged to a woman named Elaine Porter, who spoke in a calm, low voice and did not waste time pretending the inheritance was uncomplicated. "Yes, the photographs are current," Elaine said. "The parcel flooded in April after heavy rain and a failure in the drainage system. How failed is failed. The main pump is not operational, and part of the access road washed out. So I inherited a farm I can't drive onto. At present, not by an ordinary vehicle. Did Lenora Vale own a canoe?" There was a pause. "I believe there's a flat-bottomed boat in one of the outbuildings, but that outbuilding went to another beneficiary," Kelsey mouthed. "Ask what it's worth." Mara turned away from her. "Why did Mrs. Vale leave it to me? The will doesn't give a personal explanation. It was executed 6 years ago and amended twice. Your parcel remained unchanged. Did you know her?" "I handled some of her affairs near the end. I wouldn't say I knew her well." "Did she ever mention me?" Another pause, smaller this time. "She confirmed your full name and date of birth." A chill moved over Mara's arms despite the warm kitchen. "She knew my birthday?" "She had the information needed to identify you." "How?" "I'm afraid I can't tell you what I don't know." Elaine explained that Mara had time before formally accepting responsibility for the property. There would be paperwork, an inspection if she wanted one, and the practical matter of seeing what she had been left. Another relative, Craig Vale, had expressed interest in purchasing the parcel and was prepared to make an immediate offer. How immediate? "He asked me to give you his number. Before I even knew I owned it? He is aware of the condition." That made Mara sit straighter. "What did he inherit?" Kelsey snapped her fingers and pointed at her approvingly. "The residence, equipment sheds, and northern acreage. The dry part, the higher part. And somebody else got the boat. I'm not sure the boat was specifically contemplated in the will." It was the first hint of humor in Elaine's voice. Mara liked her for it, which made her suspicious. After the call, Kelsey searched the address online. Satellite images showed long green fields cut by drainage channels, a white farmhouse beneath several broad oaks, and rows of pecan trees on the southern side. The images had been taken before the flood. The parcel looked orderly then, almost gentle. Mara zoomed in until the picture blurred. "She left you the pretty part," Kelsey said. "She left me the low part. Maybe it wasn't underwater when she decided. Maybe she hated me on principle. She knew your birthday. So, do collection agencies. Kelsey leaned back. You're going. I didn't say that. You've been looking at directions for 10 minutes. Mara glanced at the map on her phone. 3 hours and 46 minutes, assuming her truck did not choose Arkansas as the place to complete its long-planned death. She called Craig Vale that afternoon. He answered on the fourth ring, with machinery rumbling behind him. His voice was friendly in the careful way of a man approaching a dog he had been told might bite. Mara, I'm glad you called. You know who I am? I know Lenora named you. Did she tell you why? No, ma'am. Lenora wasn't much for explaining herself. He said the southern acreage had been marginal even before the flood. The pecans might survive, though he would not count on it. Replacing the pump could cost $20,000, road work more. He could save Mara the expense and inconvenience. I'll give you $6,000, he said, and I'll cover the back taxes. The offer came too smoothly. Is that what the land is worth? In its present condition, it's generous. What would it be worth dry? Craig exhaled, almost a laugh. Well, if you find a way to pick it up and move it uphill, we can revisit the number. He invited her to come see it. He even offered to meet her at the county road, though the courtesy sounded suspiciously like confidence. By evening, Mara had packed jeans, work boots, a socket set, and the emergency cash she kept inside an empty deodorant tube, because Diane had once told her, burglars never wanted you to smell better. Kelsey stood in the driveway while Mara checked the oil. If the truck breaks down, call me. With what money are you rescuing me? Emotional money. That isn't accepted anywhere. It's still more than you've got. They hugged, their argument dissolving without an apology. As Mara opened the driver's door, Kelsey caught her arm. Whatever Mom did, don't let those people tell you who you are before you've even met them. Mara drove east beneath a sky the color of old aluminum. The land flattened as she crossed into Arkansas, fields spreading wide on either side of the highway. Late in the afternoon, she turned onto a county road patched with tar and followed it until pavement gave way to gravel. A dark pickup waited beside a rusted gate. A broad-shouldered man climbed out, gray beginning at his temples. Beside him stood a thin woman in sunglasses, her arms folded against the heat. Beyond them, brown water shone between drowned fence posts. Craig smiled and held out his hand. Mara Reed. Before Mara could take it, the woman removed her sunglasses and studied Mara's face. Oh, she said. Not hello, not welcome, just, oh. Then she looked at Craig with something close to alarm. She has Uncle Thomas's eyes. The words seemed to remain between them after the woman said them, too solid to pass through. Craig's hand was still extended. Mara looked at it, then at him. Who is Thomas? The woman slid her sunglasses onto the top of her head. Up close, she looked a few years older than Craig, with sun-freckled skin and a mouth that seemed built for withholding agreement. Craig lowered his hand. Paula. What? She said. You were going to let her wander around wondering why she was here? This isn't the side of the road for it. I'm comfortable. Mara stepped away from the truck. Gravel shifted under her boots. Who is Thomas? Craig looked toward the gate as if somebody might arrive and relieve him of the conversation. Our uncle, he said. Thomas Vale. My father's name was Thomas? Neither answered quickly enough. A truck passed on the county road, kicking dust over them. Mara waited until its engine faded. Was his name Thomas Vale? Yes, Paula said. Craig shot her a look. We don't know what Diane told her. She apparently told her nothing. She told me his name was Tom, Mara said. No last name. She said he drifted around playing music and never stayed anywhere long. Paula gave a short, astonished laugh. Don't, Craig warned. I'm sorry, but Uncle Thomas couldn't play a radio, and he lived in the same county his entire life. Mara felt something in her chest turn over slowly, like a heavy engine trying to catch. She had not expected warmth from these people, but she had expected basic gravity. The road, the gate, the flood behind them, all of it seemed to tilt. And Lenora. Craig rubbed a hand across the back of his neck. Paula answered. She was his wife. Mara stared at the water beyond the gate. Not sister, not mother, not parole officer, wife. A dragonfly skimmed the ditch. Somewhere across the flooded acreage, a bird made a rusty hinge sound. His wife? When? Mara asked. Paula looked at Craig again, and this time he did not stop her. When he knew your mother, she said. Mara turned toward her truck before either of them could see what crossed her face. She opened the driver's door and reached for the water bottle in the cup holder, although she was not thirsty. The bottle crackled in her grip. Diane had known how to make a lie durable. Give it one or two embarrassing details. Make the man irresponsible enough that no one would wonder why he left. Add a bad guitar. Shake your head whenever his daughter did anything reckless. Behind Mara, Craig said, "You ought to sit down." "Where?" He glanced around at the gravel, gate, and flood. "Fair point." Paula walked to the rear of the dark pickup and lowered the tailgate. "There. I don't need to sit. You're gripping that bottle like it insulted your family." Mara looked at Paula. Apparently that's a crowded field. Paula's mouth twitched, though it might have been discomfort rather than amusement. Craig moved closer without crowding her. "We don't know the whole story. But you know Lenora was his wife." "Yes. And you knew who my mother was." "I knew her name." "Did Lenora?" "Yes." The answer came gently, which made it worse. Mara took a drink to give herself something ordinary to do. The water was hot from the drive. "What did she tell you about me?" "Nothing much," Craig said. "Your name?" "That you existed." "Did she say why she left me the land?" "No." Paula leaned against the tailgate. "She said the south parcel wasn't ours." Craig's head turned. "That was between family." Paula lifted one hand toward Mara. "What category are you putting her in?" "I'm trying to do this without making it uglier. You offered her $6,000 before she knew Uncle Thomas's last name. I offered to take a flooded liability off her hands." How civic-minded. Mara screwed the cap onto her bottle. "You two do this often?" "Only when we're awake," Paula said. Craig's expression hardened. It was the first unpolished thing Mara had seen in him, and oddly, she trusted it more than his smile. "Lenora divided the property," he said. "The house, sheds, and north acreage came to me. Paula got 2 houses in town and some cash. You got the South 68. Whatever Lenora meant by that, the flood doesn't change the condition it's in today." "You mean the flood does change it? You know what I mean." "No, people keep saying that to me today." Mara walked to the rusted gate. A chain looped through it, secured with a new brass padlock. On the far side, the gravel lane descended toward water. Grass and leaves had collected along the flood line. "How deep?" she asked. "Depends where you stand," Craig said. "That's true of most water. 3 feet near the road, 6 or better through the center channel. Pump house, 4 feet inside last time I checked." "When did it fail?" "April. It's June. Water's been coming down, not very fast." Craig's jaw shifted. "We've had rain." Mara crouched beside the gate. A steel culvert ran underneath the lane, its mouth clogged with branches and trash. The debris alone did not explain 68 submerged acres, but it did not help. "Can we get out there?" Craig pulled keys from his pocket. "I've got a boat behind the machine shed." Paula crossed her arms. "The boat Lenora owned. The boat Lenora kept on property that now belongs to me." "The lawyer seemed uncertain about that," Mara said. Craig looked at her. She smiled for the first time. "I asked dull questions." The Vale farmhouse sat half a mile north on ground, high enough to be dry. It was larger than the satellite image suggested. 2 stories of white clapboard with a deep porch and green shutters faded nearly gray. Broad oaks shaded the yard. A porch swing moved slightly in the wind, though no one sat in it. Mara had imagined Lenora in several forms during the drive. Severe and thin, soft and regretful, rich enough to make strange decisions without consequence. The house offered no help. It looked cared for but unsentimental. No flower beds, no decorative signs instructing visitors to gather or bless anything. A pair of mud-caked boots stood squarely beside the back steps. "Did she die here?" Mara asked. Craig, carrying an aluminum fuel tank toward a flat-bottom boat, shook his head. "Hospital in Jonesboro. Was she sick long?" "Long enough?" Paula had followed them in her own small car. She opened the machine shed and began pulling life jackets from a nail. She had a stroke last fall. Craig ran the farm after that. Craig set the tank down harder than necessary. Paula lives in Little Rock and appears when paperwork requires a signature. I appeared every Thursday. To criticize. I brought groceries. You brought things with kale in them. Mara caught the life jacket Paula tossed her. It smelled of mildew and old gasoline. Inside the shed sat a combine, 2 tractors, a seed drill, and a row of tools hung in painted outlines. Everything had a place. Even the dirt on the concrete seemed organized. "Lenora's?" Mara asked. "Mine now," Craig said. The answer was factual, but he gave it too quickly. He hauled the boat on a trailer behind his pickup. At the flooded gate, he backed it down until the rear wheels touched water. Paula climbed into the truck bed to steady the boat, while Mara held the bowline. They worked together with the awkward efficiency of people who did not like one another, but disliked looking incompetent more. Once the boat floated free, Craig parked uphill and returned with an outboard motor. "You ever been in a John boat?" he asked Mara. "Yes." "Floodwater's different." "How?" "Things underneath it, like fence wire, branches, equipment, holes where the road used to be. Anything else you'd like to mention before we're over it?" Paula sat on the middle bench. "Snakes." Craig glared at her. "What? Arkansas snakes observe property boundaries?" Mara climbed in. The motor started on the third pull. Craig guided them down the submerged lane, moving slowly enough that the propeller stirred mud behind them. Fence posts marked the edges of what had once been fields. Pieces of leaves and pale foam collected against the wire. The pecan rows began beyond the first drainage ditch, trees rising straight from the brown surface. Mara had expected the land to look dead. It did not. New green leaves covered the pecan branches. Birds flashed between them, and insects dimpled the water. The farm had not vanished. It was holding its breath. Craig pointed to a line of debris caught 6 feet up one trunk. That was the high mark. "How long can the trees stand this?" "Not forever." Paula looked back at him. Lenora had someone coming to check them. Lenora had people coming to check everything. Half of them wanted money. People often do after working. Craig increased the throttle. The pump house stood near the lowest corner of the property. A cinder block building with a corrugated metal roof. Water covered the bottom half of its door. A narrow exterior ladder led to a loft window beneath the roofline. Mara asked Craig to pull alongside. "You can't go in," he said. "Why not?" "Because it's full of water," I noticed. "There could be snakes." Paula already briefed me. Craig let the motor idle. Mara put one boot on the narrow concrete ledge beneath the window and gripped the ladder. The boat shifted behind her. "Mara," he said, sharper now, "there's nothing in there worth breaking your neck." She climbed anyway. The metal rungs were slick but solid. At the loft window, she pushed through a warped plywood shutter and hauled herself onto a narrow platform above the machinery. The air inside was cool and smelled of silt, diesel, and standing water. Below her sat a large pump assembly connected to a pipe running through the outer wall. Mud stained the engine. Floating leaves bumped softly against it. Craig's face appeared at the window. "Satisfied?" "Not yet." She took out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam crossed belts, brackets, a fuel line, and an open space beside the flywheel. Mara crouched. She had seen machines fail from neglect. Bolts froze, hoses split. Electrical housings corroded until they crumbled in your fingers. They did not usually unscrew themselves and leave clean mounting holes behind. "Where's the starter?" she asked. "What?" "The fuel assembly, too." Craig's expression did not change, but he took too long to answer. "I told you, the pump failed." "No, parts of the pump are missing. They may have been pulled for repair." "By who?" "You'd have to ask Lenora." Mara looked down at the dark water moving around the machine. Lenora had been dead for nearly 3 months. Behind Craig, Paula said, "He ran the farm after her stroke." Craig twisted toward his sister. The boat knocked against the wall. Mara looked once more at the empty brackets, then at the flooded pecan rows visible through the window. $6,000, she thought. Generous. She climbed back onto the ladder. "I'm not selling," she said. Craig laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You've been here 40 minutes. That was enough time to find out my father had a wife and my pump had been taken apart. It's been a productive visit. It isn't your pump until the estate transfer is complete. You offered to buy it from me. The land, the will says fixed structures. You memorized it? I had almost 4 hours." Paula steadied the boat while Mara descended the ladder. Craig backed away from the window to give her room, although the set of his shoulders suggested he would have preferred to block it. When Mara stepped into the boat, muddy water sloshed over the toe of her boot. Craig said, "A starter and fuel assembly wouldn't make that pump run. The engine flooded. The controls are ruined. The intake may be packed solid. Then why remove the parts? To keep them from being ruined too." "Where are they?" "I don't know." "You ran the farm. I managed it while my aunt was dying. The words came hard enough to still Paula. Craig pulled the starter cord on the outboard and faced forward until the motor caught. No one spoke as they moved back through the pecan rows. The wind had picked up. It pushed small waves against the tree trunks and sent a sheet of glittering reflections over the water. Mara watched the pump house shrink behind them. From a distance, it looked less damaged than stranded. At the gate, Craig hauled the boat onto its trailer by himself. He refused help with a tight, pleasant smile that made clear he was imagining several things he could not politely say. Mara waited until he had secured the strap. "Whose lock is that?" He glanced at the gate. "Mine. The gate is on my parcel. The gate has always been used for access to both sides. But the lock is yours. I'll make you a key. Take it off." Craig planted both hands on the boat trailer. "You don't even know whether you're accepting the property. I know I'm not selling it to you today. For $6,000 and the taxes, you could drive home without another problem. My truck has several problems. None of them are you." Paula made a sound suspiciously like a cough. Craig looked at her. "You have somewhere else to be." "I did, but this is improving." He unhooked the keyring from his belt and opened the padlock. The chain fell with a heavy rattle. He wound it around one hand, then held the gate for Mara. "There. You have unrestricted access to 68 acres of water. Thank you. You're welcome. See? We can be family." His face changed then. Not much, but enough to show that she had found the tender place. "You should be careful using that word around here," he said. Mara met his eyes. "I've been careful with it my whole life." Didn't seem to help. Paula drove away first. She rolled down her window beside Mara's truck and handed out a business card. Vale Property Services was printed across the top, with a Little Rock address beneath it. "What is this?" Mara asked. "My number. I already have Craig's. Then you understand the value of an alternative. You called me a mess. I said you were the last mess Uncle Thomas left behind. Is there a gracious interpretation?" "No." Paula put her sunglasses back on. "But there's an accurate one. Thomas left messes. You were not the one who made them." Before Mara could answer, Paula accelerated onto the gravel road. Craig left without saying goodbye. His trailer bounced over the potholes, the boat shivering on top of it. Dust swallowed the pickup and settled slowly over the roadside weeds. Mara stood alone at the open gate. She could walk into the water now. The fact had no practical value, but she stepped through anyway. The lane sloped beneath the brown surface until water covered both boots. Heat pressed against her shoulders. Gnats circled her face. She tried to picture Diane here at 26, before motherhood became the central fact around which every story about her revolved. Diane in the packing shed. Diane looking at Thomas Vale. Diane knowing he would go home to the white farmhouse and the woman whose land now surrounded Mara's ankles. Her phone showed 2 missed calls from Kelsey and 1 from Diane. Mara called Diane first. Her mother answered before the second ring. "Are you there?" "Yes. Did you sign anything?" "No. Good. Come home." Thomas Vale. Silence. Mara waded back toward dry ground. That was his name. "Mara, I didn't want you finding out like this." "There was another way?" "Yes." "Interesting. When was that scheduled?" "I have tried to protect you from something you don't understand." "Was he married?" A truck moved on the distant highway. Mara could hear the faint whine of its tires. Diane said, "It was complicated. He was married, yes." To Lenora. Another pause. "Yes." The word cut more cleanly than Mara expected. Not because Thomas had betrayed her, he had always been in absence, but because Diane had built their life around a version in which she had been the only person wronged. "Did you work here?" Mara asked. "Who told you that?" "So you did." "It was one summer. Paula said Thomas lived here his whole life. I suppose she told you plenty. More than you did." Paula Vale was not there. "She knows he couldn't play guitar." Diane let out a breath that trembled at the end. "That was a joke. You made up a personality for him. I gave you what you needed. You gave me someone to blame. You needed that too." Mara closed her eyes. There it was. Diane's gift for saying a cruel thing in the tone of a sacrifice. Did Lenora know about me? "I'm not doing this over the phone. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm asking yes or no." "Mara, yes or no?" "Yes." The gnats gathered around Mara's damp boots. She kicked at the grass. "Did she ever try to contact me?" Diane did not answer. Mom, you need to come home. Did she? I said, I'm not discussing this on the phone. You're not discussing it anywhere. Mara ended the call. Her hand shook badly enough that she nearly dropped the phone. Kelsey called as soon as Mara's text reached her. What did you say to Mom? Kelsey asked. Hello to you too. She called me crying. That's efficient. She skipped that part with me. Mara. Dad's name was Thomas Vale. He was married to Lenora. Kelsey went quiet. A claim adjustment program chimed in the background. Oh, she said at last. That's what Paula said. Who's Paula? His niece. She dislikes me, but in a clarifying way. Are you okay? Mara looked at the flooded farm. I don't know yet. You need to come back. Mom already tried that. I'm not Mom. No, you're just using her sentence. I'm saying you don't have money for this. You don't have equipment. You don't know anything about farming. I know something about pumps. You fix toilets. I maintain 212 apartments and approximately 212 toilets. That doesn't make it less skilled. I didn't say it did. But you're standing in Arkansas because you're angry at Mom, and anger is not a business plan. Mara almost told her she had found missing machinery parts. She stopped. Kelsey would hear only expense and danger because those were the loudest parts. I'm staying tonight, Mara said. Where? I'll find a motel. With what credit card? The one that remains optimistic about me. Kelsey sighed. Send me the address. Why? So I know where to have your truck towed from. Mara smiled despite herself. Emotional money? Shut up. The nearest motel advertised weekly rates and air conditioning on a sign sun-bleached nearly white. The clerk wanted $89 plus a $50 deposit because Mara lived out of state. Mara thanked him as if he had offered useful directions and walked back to the truck. She ate crackers and peanut butter in the parking lot of a farm supplies store while searching property records, pump specifications, flood reports, and the retail price of every missing part she could identify from her phone photographs. By 7, her battery had dropped below 20%, and her conclusions had become less intelligent. The land might be worth something dry. Getting it dry might cost more than the land. She enlarged the photograph of the pump engine. The bolts around the missing starter were dark with oil, not orange with long exposure. The fuel line had been capped. Someone had removed those parts before the water rose, or with enough care to protect the rest of the system. That did not prove Craig had done it. It did prove his story had holes. A horn sounded beside her. Paula's small car had pulled into the parking space across from Mara. She got out holding 2 white paper bags. Please tell me you weren't following me, Mara said. I went to your motel. The clerk said you objected to capitalism and left. I objected to the deposit. I brought barbecue. Mara looked at the bags. Is this an apology? No, it's brisket. That feels more manipulative. It usually is. They sat on the lowered tailgate of Mara's truck. Paula passed her a sandwich wrapped in foil, baked beans, and enough paper napkins to insulate a wall. For a while, they ate without speaking. Finally, Mara said, Why did Lenora leave me Thomas's parcel? Paula wiped sauce from her thumb. She never called it Thomas's parcel in front of Craig. But she did with you? Once, after the stroke. She was trying to explain which drainage map she wanted, and she got angry because I brought the wrong one. Did she say why it was mine? She said, that part was never yours to count on. Meaning yours? Craig's and mine. That isn't an explanation. Lenora considered explanations a form of begging. Mara folded the foil around the remains of her sandwich. What was she like? Mean when she was tired, generous when no one was watching. She remembered what everybody owed her and forgot what she owed them. Paula stared across the parking lot. She also kept that southern ground alive for years when Craig said it wasn't worth the diesel. Why stop? Paula's face closed a fraction. You'd have to ask Craig. Convenient. I didn't run the farm. You said you came every Thursday. To see Lenora. Not audit him. A mud-streaked green pickup turned into the lot and parked beside them. The woman behind the wheel was in her 60s with silver hair cut bluntly at her jaw. She lowered the window. Paula Vale, she called. You feeding strays now? Paula smiled for the first time without resistance. Only the ones Lenora left property to. The woman's gaze moved to Mara. It was direct but not unkind. So, you're Diane Reed's daughter. Mara set down her beans. Everybody in Arkansas knows my mother except me. Not everybody. The woman opened the truck door. But I knew Lenora. I'm Ruth Calder. My place borders your south line, my underwater south line, I noticed. Do you happen to own a boat? Ruth looked at Mara's muddy boots, the pump photographs on her phone, and the tool bag visible behind the truck seat. Then she looked at Paula. Craig, take his home? With ceremony, Paula said. Ruth nodded as if that settled a private question. I've got one, she said. You can borrow it in the morning. If you still want that farm after spending a full day on it, then we'll decide whether you're brave, stupid, or some useful combination of the two. Can we decide that after coffee? Mara asked. Ruth considered her. Coffee won't improve your judgment. It improves the experience of having it questioned. That sounds like Diane. Mara could not tell whether the comparison was affectionate. Before she could ask, Ruth nodded toward the green pickup. Follow me. You can park at my place tonight. The equipment barn has a bathroom, an outlet, and fewer bedbugs than that motel. You don't know me. I know your truck won't start again if you leave those lights on. Mara turned. In the gathering dusk, both headlights shone weakly against the farm supply store. She jumped off the tailgate and reached through the window to twist the switch. It warns me when I open the door. It probably did. The chime's broken. Then it warned you in spirit. Paula gathered the empty containers. This is why Ruth has no friends. I have friends. They all know how headlights work. Ruth's farm lay 3 miles from the flooded gate, reached by a gravel lane that passed soybean fields and a stand of cottonwoods. Her house was a low brick ranch with a metal roof, but she directed Mara past it toward a broad equipment barn. 2 tractors, a grain cart, and a collection of machinery Mara could not name stood beneath the open-sided portion. The enclosed workshop smelled of grease and cut grass. The bathroom contained a shower with a plastic curtain printed with rainbow trout. A handwritten sign above the sink read, "Turn the faucet all the way off, unless you are personally paying for the well pump." The hot water takes a minute, Ruth said. Don't complain, it senses weakness. Mara stood beside her truck with her duffel at her feet. I can pay you something. You can leave before breakfast if you turn out strange. Your standard for strange seems flexible. I knew Lenora Vale for 34 years. It had to be. Ruth opened a side door to the workshop. A narrow office occupied one corner, furnished with a metal desk, a filing cabinet, and a vinyl sofa, the color of canned peas. You can sleep there. That's better than Kelsey's couch. Who's Kelsey? My sister. Older? How can you tell? You said her couch like it had personally failed you. Mara smiled. Older by 4 years. Does she know where you are? She knows I'm somewhere she disapproves of. Call her anyway. If you disappear, I don't want your family arriving here with opinions. Paula set a paper sack of leftover barbecue on the desk. She had followed them from town, though she had claimed twice she was leaving. Now she hovered at the office door. I'm going back to Little Rock, she said. Drive careful, Ruth told her. Paula looked at Mara. Craig will call you. I own a decline button. He'll be nicer this time. That sounds threatening. It's how he works. He gets nicer as he gets angrier. Useful warning. Paula tucked her sunglasses into her purse. Without them, fatigue showed in the fine lines around her eyes. Lenora wasn't trying to insult you with that land, she said. Then she had unlucky timing. She wasn't sentimental, but she didn't make careless decisions. Did she make cruel ones? Paula's gaze moved briefly toward Ruth. All the time, Ruth said. Paula gave a faint nod. But not careless ones. After she left, Mara called Kelsey from the workshop. She angled the phone to show the vinyl sofa, the locked office door, and Ruth standing in the background, holding a wrench like a witness credential. This is Ruth, Mara said. She owns the neighboring farm and believes I'm bad with headlights. Is that the whole reason she let you stay? Kelsey asked. Ruth leaned toward the phone. No, I'm also curious. Kelsey seemed uncertain whether this reassured her. When the call ended, Ruth locked the main barn and sat on an overturned bucket near Mara's truck. Tree frogs had begun calling along a drainage ditch behind the building. The air smelled wet and green. Mara sat on the bumper. How did you know my mother? I met her when she worked for the Vales. One summer, part of 2. Did you know about her and Thomas? Ruth rubbed a smear of grease from the wrench with her thumb. Not until everyone did. What does that mean? It means an affair is secret right up until it becomes the only thing people discuss. Did Lenora discuss it? No. Never? Not with me. Mara watched a moth strike the barn light repeatedly, making the same mistake with admirable commitment. What did she do? Kept working. That's it? No. But it's what I saw. Ruth stood, ending the conversation without apology. We launch at 7. There's coffee in the office cabinet. It's terrible, but it's free. The vinyl sofa squeaked whenever Mara breathed. She spent half the night awake, listening to the building settle and checking her phone. Craig called twice and left one message. Mara, I think we started off poorly. There's a great deal of family history here, and Paula has a habit of giving fragments without context. Let's sit down tomorrow and talk like reasonable people. Diane left no message at all. At 6:30, Ruth appeared with 2 travel mugs and a paper bag containing biscuits wrapped in a dish towel. She had changed into rubber boots and a faded green work shirt. Mara had slept in her clothes and looked as if she had been folded for storage. You said 7, Mara mumbled. I wanted to see whether you'd be ready. I'm wearing boots. You're holding one. Mara looked down. The other stood beneath the sofa. Ruth's boat was smaller than Craig's and old enough that every surface bore a dent. Its outboard had been repaired with mismatched bolts. Mara approved immediately. They towed it to the flooded gate with Ruth's truck. Water had receded perhaps an inch overnight, leaving a fresh band of mud on the grass. It was not enough to expose the lane. Ruth unlocked a red chain securing the boat to its trailer. Your parcel runs from this road to the old Sycamore line east. North boundary follows the main drainage ditch. You know it well. My water goes where your water goes. So if mine doesn't drain, mine backs up along the west field. Not enough to drown soybeans yet. Enough to irritate me. That explains the hospitality. It explains the boat. Ruth handed Mara the bowline. The engine coughed, smoked, and finally settled into a rough rhythm. Ruth let Mara steer after they cleared the submerged fence. With the sun higher, she could see variations in the water. Dark over the drainage channels, amber above grass, silver where wind moved freely across the open field. They checked the pecan rows first. Ruth used a pocket knife to scrape a thumbnail-sized patch of bark from 3 trees. Green showed beneath. Alive, she said. For how long? Depends how fast you get their feet dry. Trees have feet? Everything on a farm has whatever body part makes you feel guilty about neglecting it. Near the southern levee, a section had slumped inward. It looked bad but not catastrophic. Ruth explained that water had entered through the drainage channel when the gate failed to close, then spread across the lower acreage. The pump should have removed it once the river level dropped. Should have, Mara said. Should is the most expensive word in farming. They tied the boat beside the pump house. Mara climbed to the loft window with her tool bag, while Ruth remained below, using an oar to push floating branches away from the intake grate. In daylight, the interior revealed more damage. Mud coated the engine block halfway up. Wiring drooped from the control panel. A metal shelf had collapsed into the water, spilling oil cans and filters. The loft itself was narrow but dry. A painted steel cabinet stood bolted to the wall, its doors swollen with rust. Mara worked one open with a screwdriver. Inside were wrenches, grease pencils, cracked work gloves, and a stack of service manuals sealed in plastic sleeves. Well, Ruth called, there are manuals. Lenora saved everything, except a functioning pump. Ruth did not answer. Mara opened the service record tucked inside the first manual. Dates and running hours filled the pages in 2 different kinds of handwriting. The last recorded service was from the previous October. After that, nothing. She photographed each page. Beside the cabinet, faded block letters showed through newer gray paint. TV in black, then the ghost of another letter that had been sanded away. She ran her thumb over them. Was this Thomas's cabinet? She asked. Ruth's oar stopped scraping below. Probably, that means yes. It means machinery outlives arguments. Mara climbed down far enough to inspect the control box from the ladder. Corrosion had reached several relays, but the box was not destroyed. The seals had held better than Craig claimed. The starter mounting plate remained above the highest mud line. Its wiring had been disconnected and taped, not torn loose. Somebody planned to put those parts back, she said. Ruth looked up. Maybe? Craig? I didn't see him remove them. That wasn't what I asked. Ruth pushed the boat away from the wall, forcing Mara to climb down. You're trying to decide whether the farm can be saved. Decide that before you decide who to hate. I can do 2 things. Most people do the second one better. They followed the drainage channel toward its outlet. Halfway there, the boat's propeller struck something and stalled. Ruth raised the engine while Mara leaned over with the oar. Tangled wire and plastic mesh had wrapped around the propeller. Fence? Mara asked. Part of one. It took 20 minutes, a pair of side cutters, and several words Ruth used too comfortably for them to be rare. When the propeller turned again, Mara examined the floating wire. It had come from a temporary fence driven across the channel upstream. Broken posts still stood beneath the surface, catching branches and trash until the channel narrowed to a sluggish opening. That shouldn't be there, Ruth said. Whose fence? Craig put cattle on the north stubble last winter. He fenced across a drainage channel? Water was low. Water changes height. It's one of its hobbies. Ruth looked at her. You might be useful. They spent the rest of the morning cutting mesh and dragging debris into the boat. It was hot, filthy work. Mara sliced one glove, bruised her thigh against a bench, and discovered that floodwater could produce smells no sensible world required. When the last coil came free, the channel surface shifted. Water began moving through the opening, slow but visible, carrying leaves toward the outlet. Mara watched a stick drift past the boat. It was almost nothing. 68 acres would not drain through one cleared obstruction before the pecans drowned. The pump still lacked parts, the road was broken, and her bank balance was less than the probable cost of repairing a single relay. But the water was moving because she had touched the problem. Back at Ruth's barn, Mara called Elaine Porter. I want to accept the property, she said. Elaine was silent for a beat. Have you reviewed the taxes and estimated restoration costs? Yes. Would you like more time? Probably. That wasn't my question. No. Send me what I need to sign. Afterward, Ruth stood at the workbench cleaning the side cutters. You just bought yourself a mess, she said. Mara looked through the open barn doors toward the distant line of pecan trees. No, she said. Apparently it was left to me. Ruth hung the side cutters on a peg. That sounded rehearsed. It came to me under pressure. Pressure improves some things. Coffee? No. Ruth poured what remained in the travel mug into a drain and rinsed it. Mara watched her move around the workshop, returning every tool to a painted outline on the wall. There was something of Lenora in that habit, or perhaps farms train people into the same small obediences. Could I borrow your boat for a few days? Mara asked. You can use it. That's different. Borrowing suggests I won't know where you are, and if I want to take it out alone. Ruth closed the toolbox. Then you wear the life jacket, carry an oar, and leave me your truck keys so I know you came back. My truck keys are not collateral. That truck isn't collateral. It's a cry for help. A vehicle crunched down the lane before Mara could answer. Craig's pickup stopped outside the barn. He got out in clean jeans and a button-down shirt, carrying 2 paper cups and a cardboard tray. Ruth glanced at Mara. There's your coffee. Pressure must have improved it. Craig entered the workshop smiling as if their previous meeting had ended with a pleasant discussion about rainfall. I called, he said. I heard. I thought we could talk. You brought 2 coffees. I didn't know Ruth would be here. It's my barn, Ruth said. Craig set 1 cup on the bench in front of her. I brought 3, the others in the truck. Ruth took it, sniffed the lid, and walked outside without thanking him. The workshop door remained open. It was the nearest thing to privacy she intended to provide. Craig handed Mara the 2nd cup. Paula says I get nicer when I'm angry. She says it like she's measured. She's had years. The coffee was sweet enough to dissolve a spoon. Mara drank it anyway. Craig leaned against the workbench, careful not to disturb the arranged tools. Elaine called. You told her to proceed. That's confidential. She needed updated tax figures from me. Then she called about tax figures. You're accepting the property. Yes. After one morning. Yesterday I was impulsive. Today I have experience. He looked toward Ruth's boat parked beneath the shed roof. Muddy fence wire lay in a heap beside it. You were out there. We cleared part of the drainage channel. You had no business cutting my fence. The fence was on my parcel. It contained cattle over winter. It contained most of a tree this morning. Craig removed his cap, smoothed his hair, and put it on again. This is the problem. You see one obstruction, one missing part, and you think you understand the system. No, I think I found 2 problems. That pump has been unreliable for years. The service log disagrees. His eyes shifted. You went through Lenora's cabinet. It came with the fixed structure. It was Uncle Thomas's. So, I've heard. Craig looked down at his coffee. When he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its practiced calm. My father and Thomas built that pump house. Lenora treated every wrench Thomas touched like a sacred relic, after spending years telling everyone she hated him. That sounds confusing. It was exhausting. Did she hate me? I don't know. Did you? His head lifted. I didn't know you. You knew I existed. I knew Thomas had a daughter somewhere. Lenora wouldn't discuss it. Paula said she mentioned my name. Paula turns every unfinished sentence into a revelation. Mara placed the coffee on the bench. Where are the pump parts? I told you. They may have been removed for repair. Who removes equipment without remembering where it went? Someone managing 700 acres, a sick ant, and a bad harvest. The answer had weight. For the first time, Mara pictured more than Craig's offer and his cleanly capped fuel line. She pictured the farmhouse in winter, Lenora unable to move one side of her body, fields still requiring decisions no matter who was ill. It did not make the parts reappear. Did you remove them? She asked. Craig looked at her steadily. I had people working on that pump. That isn't an answer. It's the one I have. Ruth came back into the barn with her cup. Then it's not much of one. Craig turned. This isn't your concern. My west field is backing up. It's always wet in June. It wasn't until you stopped running Lenora's pump. Her pump seized. After the starter walked away. Craig picked up his coffee. You've disliked me since I was 20. I disliked you at 20. You've had time to change my mind. He gave Mara a look that suggested this was the environment in which any honest conversation had to survive. My offer stands, he said. 6,000, taxes paid. I'll add the transfer expenses you've already incurred. No, you haven't priced the repair. I have the model number and an internet connection, then you know. A refurbished starter alone cost more than Mara had in checking. The fuel assembly was harder to find. New controls, rewiring, labor, and draining the engine could push the total past $20,000, just as Craig had warned. She shrugged. I know people charge too much. You can't fix this with apartment complex leftovers? No, those are holding up buildings in Memphis. His mouth almost smiled. It made him look younger, and for one dangerous second, familiar. Then it vanished. When this turns into more than you can handle, he said, call me before you destroy what's left. He set the untouched coffee beside the one Mara had abandoned and walked out. Ruth watched his truck leave. He still owes me for a hydraulic hose. Is there anyone you don't have a complaint about? Yes. Who? Dead people. Complaints are wasted on them. Mara pulled the pump photographs up on her phone. Do you know anyone with salvaged irrigation equipment? I know people with equipment. Would they sell? They might. Would you lend me $500 if I wrote up repayment terms? No. The answer came so quickly Mara laughed. I hadn't finished. You included money and lend, the rest was decoration. I can pay you back once I get work. Then get work and buy what you need. The trees might not wait. Neither will debt. Mara put away the phone. Heat rose into her face despite the cool workshop. Ruth softened enough to look mildly irritated with herself. I'll lend tools, she said. I'll lend the boat. You can use the barn while you're here. Money makes people pretend they agreed to things they didn't. I wouldn't. You're angry enough to agree to anything that keeps you here. I'm not staying because I'm angry. Then why are you staying? Mara looked past her at the open fields. The obvious answer was because Diane had told her not to. She disliked how much truth that contained. I want to know what Lenora thought she was giving me. Ruth twisted the cardboard sleeve around her coffee cup. That's better than anger. Not safer, but better. The roadside diner hired Mara for evening shifts after the owner watched her refill the broken paper towel dispenser while waiting to ask for an application. She had not worked food service since her early 20s, but the owner, a compact woman named Sandy, said anybody who carried tools and could tolerate Craig Vale deserved one chance. You know Craig? Mara asked. Everybody knows Craig. That sentence keeps getting less useful. Sandy gave her 2 black shirts, an apron, and a schedule beginning that night. By late afternoon, Mara had spent most of her remaining cash on rubber gloves, electrical cleaner, bottled water, and a second-hand camping mat from the farm supply store. She placed the mat in Ruth's boat. Ruth stared at it. What's that? A mat? I know what a mat is. I'm moving into the pump house loft. No, I can't stay in your office forever. You've stayed one night, and your sofa squeaks. Most people would avoid insulting free furniture until the second night. The loft is dry, the building is surrounded by water. I'll have the boat. The building has no bathroom. The woods are full of possibilities. Most of those possibilities itch. Mara loaded her duffel and tool bag. I start at the diner at 5. If I sleep here, I'm driving 6 extra miles each way. That's your argument? It's one of them. The pump house has diesel residue, mold, spiders, and whatever died in the wall. So did my last apartment. Ruth folded her arms. You need a battery light, mosquito net, and radio. I have a phone. A radio does not stop working because you watched repair videos all afternoon. Mara hesitated. You have a radio? No? Ruth walked into the workshop and returned with one, along with a lantern and a rolled mosquito net. The boat rode low under Mara's belongings. Water had fallen enough to reveal the tops of grass along the submerged lane, evidence that the cleared channel was helping, though not quickly. At the pump house, they hauled everything through the loft window. Ruth inspected the platform, tested the ladder twice, and declared the entire arrangement foolish in 6 distinct ways. I'll be back after work, Mara said. You'll be back before dark. My shift ends at 11. Then you stay at the barn. I can navigate the lane, not in the dark. Mara pointed to the rows of fence posts. Those lead straight here. So do cemetery markers. They're not navigation aids. Ruth made her promise to return to the barn if the water rose, the engine failed, lightning appeared, or she felt dizzy. Mara agreed to the terms because none involved money. After her first shift, she drove to Ruth's, left the truck, and walked to the water carrying a flashlight. Ruth had tied the boat at the gate and taped a note to the seat. Headlights. Mara turned, trudged back to the truck, and switched them off. The trip to the pump house took 20 minutes. In darkness, the farm changed shape. The pecan trees became black columns. Frogs scattered ahead of the bow. Her flashlight caught eyes along the bank, low and bright, then lost them. Inside the loft, she hung the mosquito net, spread the mat beside Thomas's steel cabinet, and ate the leftover brisket cold. The place creaked whenever water pressed through the culvert beneath it. She opened the service manual again. Thomas's handwriting was the larger of the two, impatient and slanted. The second hand was narrow, exact, and relentless. Lenora had recorded every belt change, gallon of fuel, an hour the pump ran after his death. Year after year, her notes continued alone. Mara found the final complete entry from October. Intake cleared, starter sticking again, told C not to wait until spring. Beneath it, in different ink, someone had written, "Will handle." Mara stared at the single initial until the lantern dimmed. Then she heard an engine on the flooded lane. Not the uneven rattle of Ruth's outboard. This one was deeper, moving slowly through the pecan rows toward her. Mara switched off the lantern. The darkness became immediate and complete. She crouched beside the loft window, feeling foolish for hiding inside a building she legally owned, and more foolish for not knowing whether that made her safe. The motor drew closer, then dropped to an idle. A white beam moved across the cinder block wall. Mara? Craig. She turned the lantern back on. Do you usually visit women by boat after midnight? His face appeared below the window. Do you usually sleep in condemned pump houses? Has it been condemned? It would have to be inspected before anyone could condemn it. Then don't spread rumors. He guided his boat against the ladder. A large flashlight lay on the seat beside a red plastic fuel can. He looked tired rather than angry. Ruth told you I was here? Ruth called to say, if I noticed anyone stealing her boat, I should assume it was you. That sounds like permission. She also said you were planning to sleep here. Concerned? About the building? Yes? About me? I don't know you well enough. At least that's honest. Craig reached into the boat and held up a battery-powered carbon monoxide detector. Mara stared at it. Are you expecting the pump to start by itself? There could be fumes trapped below, fuels floating on the water. You brought me a safety device. I brought the estate a safety device. Your tenderness is overwhelming. Take it. She climbed partway down and accepted the detector. He also passed her a fire extinguisher, 2 gallons of drinking water, and a sealed bag containing toilet paper. Mara held up the last item. The estate thinks of everything. The estate has been camping before. She set the supplies in the loft. When she returned to the window, Craig had tied his boat to the ladder and was examining Ruth's boat as if assessing the condition of an escaped animal. "I found Lenora's last service entry," Mara said. His hands stopped on the rope. She wrote that the starter was sticking and told C not to wait until spring. "There are several people whose names begin with C. On this farm?" "Yes." "Name 2. Craig, that's 1. He looked up, and Craig's plumbing and Paragould. "Did Lenora use them?" "No." Strong effort. He leaned back on the boat bench. "Yes. She told me." "What did you do?" "I called someone." "Who?" "A mechanic." "Name?" "I don't remember." "Did the mechanic remove the starter and fuel assembly?" "Possibly." Mara rested both forearms on the sill. "You really came all the way out here to bring toilet paper and keep lying?" "I came because you don't understand floodwater. If you fall in at night and get tangled in fence wire, no one will hear you. I understand that." "No, you understand it as information. That's different." A bullfrog boomed close to the boat. Craig glanced toward the sound. "Thomas almost drowned out here once," he said. He went into the channel to clear an intake by hand. His boot caught in wire. "My father got him out." "How old was he?" 30, maybe. "Was Lenora here?" She was the one screaming at both of them from the bank. Mara tried to fit the story beside the father Diane had invented. Did he really hate steady work? Craig gave her a tired smile. Thomas worked constantly. That was not the same as being dependable. What does that mean? He'd spend 18 hours repairing a machine, then forget he promised to drive Lenora to a doctor's appointment. He'd help a stranger pull an engine and leave his own bills in a drawer. People loved him because he made generosity look exciting. Other people handled what came after. Lenora, usually. And my mother? Craig looked away. "That was after I left for college," he said. "I know what people said. I don't know what happened in private. You know he stayed married?" "Yes." "How long did he live after Diane left?" 12 years. Mara had imagined her father disappearing into some vague American distance. Now he had 12 years she could locate. 12 planting seasons, 12 winters in the white farmhouse, 12 birthdays in which he had known where she was and remained here. How did he die? Tractor rolled on a ditch bank. Was he alone? Craig nodded. Lenora found him? My father did. The frogs filled the silence between them. Craig untied his boat. There's rain north of here. Not much, but if the water rises, go to Ruth's. You could stay in the farmhouse and not worry about me. I could. He pulled the starter cord. The engine caught, then he looked up once more. You think I flooded that ground to force a sale? I think you want it cheap. I want the drainage system under one person's control. Splitting farms creates arguments that last longer than the people who started them. That sounds like Lenora's decision, not mine. It is. But you're the one still alive. He moved away before Mara could ask whether that was regret or accusation. Rain came lightly near dawn, tapping the metal roof without raising the water. Mara woke every time the pump house creaked. At 6, she gave up and climbed down to check the engine. With rubber gloves and a headlamp, she cleaned mud from the upper casing, dried connections, and labeled each damaged wire with strips torn from diner order tape. The control relays looked ugly, but not hopeless. One cracked when she touched it. Another cleaned up well enough that the contacts moved. By 8, her shoulders ached. She changed shirts in the loft and reached the diner in time for the breakfast rush. Sandy placed 3 plates on Mara's arm and said, "Table 6 wants wheat toast instead. They currently have white." They discovered a moral objection. Before or after I delivered it? After. That's when most principles appear. The work left no room to think. Mara carried coffee, wiped syrup, memorized who wanted gravy on the side, and who considered the side a personal insult. At the end of the shift, Sandy counted $48 in tips into Mara's hand. "You move well," she said. "I'm highly motivated by avoiding collisions." "You coming back tomorrow?" "Yes." "Then stop correcting the coffee maker. It's older than you and vindictive." Mara bought 2 replacement relays from an electrical supplier. The rest of the money went into her gas tank and the envelope marked truck that she kept in the glove compartment. Kelsey called while Mara sat outside the supply store. "The finance company left a message here," she said. "They have my number. They enjoy an audience. I'll pay Friday." "With what?" "I have a job. In Arkansas? Diner." Kelsey was silent long enough to make the word sound worse than it was. You had a maintenance job with benefits, she said. I had a maintenance job. The benefits belonged to the people who laid me off. You know what I mean. Mara looked at the bag containing the relays. Everyone keeps saying that. I'm worried. I know. Mom hasn't slept. That sounds like a conversation between Mom and nighttime. Mara, what do you want me to do? Come home, sell to Craig, and let her keep lying because the truth made her tired? I want you not to wreck your life proving a point. I'm trying to fix a pump. You've been there 3 days. 4. That is not better. Kelsey's voice softened. Come back for a week. We'll look for jobs. The farm will still be flooded when you return. Mara almost said yes. She missed air conditioning that did not smell faintly of diesel. She missed Kelsey's terrible sofa and the way her sister watched television with subtitles because she ate chips too loudly. Then she looked at the relays. I can't, she said. Kelsey ended the call politely, which was how Mara knew she was angry. At Ruth's barn, an old irrigation motor sat beneath a tarp behind the workshop. Mara had noticed it the first night, but assumed it was scrap. Now she pulled the cover away. The motor was smaller than the pump house engine, mounted to a wheeled frame with a damaged gearbox and no hose. Its faded label matched a brand mentioned in one of Lenora's manuals. Ruth found Mara kneeling beside it. No, she said, I didn't ask. You looked interested. What happened to it? Gearbox seized. When? 2 years ago. Engine turn? It did. Can I open it? No. Mara wiped her hands on her jeans. Why keep a broken motor under a tarp? Why sleep in a broken building? Potential? Sentiment? Same thing with better advertising. Ruth considered the motor. My small tractor won't stay in second gear, I noticed. You didn't drive it. I heard you drive it. What's wrong? Shift fork, maybe linkage? I'd have to open the cover. If you fix the tractor, you can use the irrigation motor. Even if I fix that too? Especially if you fix that too. I'll need hose. I have some. You said the boat and tools. This is equipment. Don't make me regret expanding. They shook on it. The tractor took Mara most of the afternoon. The linkage had loosened enough to prevent full engagement, but the shift fork was intact. She made a bushing from a brass fitting in Ruth's scrap bin, adjusted the rod, and drove the tractor twice around the barn. Ruth stood with her hands on her hips, pretending not to be impressed. Second gear, Mara called. I can count. Want third? I'm not paying extra. The irrigation gearbox was worse. Water had entered through a failed seal and turned the oil into brown paste. Mara disassembled it on the workbench, cleaned each gear, replaced 2 bearings with spares Ruth had saved, and cut a gasket from sheet material. They worked past dark. Ruth made sandwiches and criticized Mara's use of mustard. Mara criticized Ruth's labeling system after finding 3 drawers marked various. At 10, the gearbox turned by hand. By the following afternoon, the little engine was mounted beside the flooded channel. Ruth provided 2 lengths of hose, neither quite long enough, and Mara joined them with a section of pipe and 4 clamps. The intake floated from an empty chemical drum. The outlet crossed the damaged lane and emptied into the county ditch. It won't drain the whole field, Ruth said. It doesn't have to. What does it have to do? Be more useful than Craig thinks I am. The motor coughed on the first pull, spat smoke on the second, and kicked backward hard enough to bruise Mara's palm on the third. On the 7th attempt, it started. The hose jerked. Muddy water surged through it, hesitated at the joined section, then spilled into the ditch in a thick, steady stream. Mara laughed before she could stop herself. Ruth watched the water flow. That coupling will leak. It's leaking now. It'll leak worse. Everything leaks worse eventually. Ruth looked at her sideways. You're definitely Diane's daughter. The comparison still hurt, but differently this time. Mara crouched beside the engine and adjusted the throttle. By sunset, the waterline had fallen less than half an inch. It was the smallest visible change on 68 acres. Mara marked it on the pump house wall anyway. She added the date beneath the line with a grease pencil from Thomas's cabinet. Ruth stood in the boat below, holding the rope. You planning to mark every half inch? Only the meaningful ones. At that rate, you'll run out of wall before you run out of water. The temporary pump ran in 6-hour stretches. Any longer, and the gearbox heated enough to make Mara nervous. Every few hours, she shut it down, checked the oil, tightened the improvised coupling, and cleaned leaves from the floating intake. The first morning, a dead carp lodged against it. Mara removed the fish with a shovel and held it away from her body. Do not say this builds character, she told Ruth. I wasn't going to. Good. I was going to say it attracts raccoons. By the fourth day, broad patches of grass emerged along the western edge. The grass lay flattened beneath a film of mud, but green shoots showed through. Water no longer touched the lowest forks of the pecan trees. Mara began walking where she had previously needed the boat. Every step had to be tested. Mud swallowed her boots to the ankles, and invisible channels appeared without warning. Still, walking felt like taking the land back 1 foot at a time. Paula arrived on Saturday wearing new rubber boots, white jeans, and the expression of someone who had dressed for the wrong emergency. Ruth looked at the jeans. Those won't survive. They were already a mistake. Paula carried a sack of groceries and a bakery box. I brought lunch. Brisket again? Mara asked. Fried chicken. The manipulation is evolving. I also brought pie. I withdraw my concern. They ate in the pump house loft, with their legs hanging out the window. The water below carried a rainbow sheen, where old fuel had risen from the machinery. Ruth declined to come up and ate in her boat, claiming she had no desire to spend lunch inside a chimney for mold. Paula looked around the narrow loft. The mosquito net hung over Mara's mat, her diner shirts from Nails, and a plastic crate held canned food beside Thomas's cabinet. You're really living here, she said. Living is a generous description. Craig said Ruth was exaggerating. About what? Everything. The little pump, the channel, you staying here. Mara handed her a napkin. Why would she exaggerate? Because irritating Craig is her preferred form of exercise. From below, Ruth called, "Keeps my heart strong." Paula leaned toward the window. She hears everything. She's had years of practice listening to Vales talk about her. Paula picked crust from her chicken. Craig thinks I encouraged you. To keep the land? To distrust him. He handled that without help. He's not entirely what you think. No one is. It's exhausting. Paula looked toward the steel cabinet. Her gaze rested on the faded letters beneath the gray paint. Uncle Thomas kept candy in the top drawer, she said. I found grease pencils. Lenora threw out the candy. Health concerns, ants. Also, she was furious with him. Were those separate things? With them? Rarely. Mara waited, hoping Paula would continue. She did not. After lunch, Paula insisted on seeing the exposed acreage. Within 10 minutes, one boot stuck in the mud and came off her foot. She hopped on one leg, swearing, while Mara dug it out. Ruth watched from firmer ground. White jeans were optimistic. Paula pulled the muddy boot back on. You mentioned that. I wanted you to know my opinion survived evidence. They reached the broken fence line where Mara and Ruth had cleared the channel. Debris still collected against the remaining posts. Paula stared at the bent mesh. Craig knew this was here, she said. He put it here, for cattle. Water doesn't care why. Paula crouched beside a broken post. Lenora would have made him pull it before the first rain. Was she still able to tell him? After the stroke? Some days. She lost words, not opinions. You said he ran the farm. He did. Did he run it badly? Paula stood, wiping mud from her fingers. He ran the part he expected to own. The sentence landed quietly. Mara glanced at Ruth, but Ruth had turned toward the pump hose. Why did he expect my parcel? Mara asked. Because he kept asking Lenora to change the will. Did she say no? She threw a television remote at him. That could mean several things. She hit the wall beside his head. Lenora rarely missed by accident. Paula's voice held affection and resentment in equal measure. Mara was beginning to understand that everyone who had known Lenora carried both. Did she ever tell you why she chose me? Mara asked. No. She asked me to find a current address for you once. When? About 7 years ago. What did she do with it? I don't know. You didn't ask? Lenora was recovering from surgery. I assumed she was settling her affairs. Did she write to me? Paula hesitated. You'd have to ask your mother. The pump sputtered before Mara could answer. The engine slowed, coughed twice, and stopped. Mara ran toward it. The coupling had slipped. Water sprayed from the joint, turning the ground around the motor into a brown soup. She shut the fuel valve and dropped to her knees. One clamp had cracked. The others had shifted under vibration. I need a proper coupler, she said. Ruth came up beside her. Yes, and longer discharge hose. This bend is putting pressure on the joint. Yes. Do you save your useful agreement for mechanical disasters? I don't waste it on conversation. A reinforced coupler and 50 feet of hose cost $318. Mara found a used fuel assembly listed 2 counties away for $400 more. Her truck payment was due Friday. The back taxes remained untouched. She called Kelsey during the break between lunch and dinner shifts. "I need to ask you something," Mara said. "That sentence has never led to a vacation. Could you lend me $700? Kelsey made no sound. "I have the diner job," Mara continued. "I can pay $100 a week once the pump's stable." $700. There's a used fuel assembly that might fit the main engine, and I need discharge hose for the temporary one. You want me to buy hose? I want you to lend me money. For hose. And a fuel assembly. Kelsey's chair squeaked through the phone. "What happened to $6,000? I didn't sell. I know. I'm asking why $6,000 was insulting 2 weeks ago, and now $700 is an emergency. Because Craig wants the land for a reason. Maybe the reason is he has a boat." Mara closed her eyes. Outside the diner's back door, grease shimmered on the pavement around the dumpster. "The trees are still alive," she said. "They are trees. They're my trees. You met them last week. That doesn't make them less mine." Kelsey exhaled. "You're asking me to put money into a farm left by a dead woman you didn't know, after I let you live in my house because you couldn't make your truck payment. I'm asking for a loan. And if the used part doesn't work, I'll resell it. For how much? I don't know. That means less." Mara picked at a split in the wooden doorframe. "You could just say no. No." The word hurt more after Mara invited it. Kelsey's voice softened. "Come home. You can get another maintenance job. Sell the land once you're not angry. I'm not staying because I'm angry. You keep saying that like repetition turns it true. What do you think I'm doing here? I think Mom hid something, and now you're letting Lenora Vale become the good mother because she left you property." Mara went still. "You don't know anything about her, neither do you. That's the point." "No, the point is you always choose the thing that needs rescuing. Broken appliances, bad jobs, men with plans. Now it's a farm. At least the farm doesn't explain cryptocurrency to me." Kelsey did not laugh. "I housed you," she said. "I fed you. I listened to you complain about the sofa and the neighborhood and the way I fold towels. You've been gone less than 2 weeks, and the first thing you ask is whether I'll help you stay gone." Mara leaned against the warm metal door. "I didn't mean it like that. You rarely do." Sandy pushed through carrying a trash bag. She stopped when she saw Mara's face, then backed inside without comment. Kelsey said, "I have to get back to work." The call ended. Mara stood beside the dumpster until Sandy opened the door again. "You need 5 more minutes?" Sandy asked. "No, you're sure?" "No, but Table 4 wants pie. Table 4 always wants pie. It's their most stable relationship." Mara worked until 11 and used almost all her tips to buy the coupler. The extra hose would have to wait. She repositioned the motor closer to the ditch, shortening the discharge run, and restarted it before sunrise. Without Paula there, the exposed fence line looked worse. Mud coated the broken posts. Plastic mesh remained buried along the bank, and every new inch of drainage revealed more. Mara worked with side cutters while the small pump throbbed behind her. She filled Ruth's boat with wire, branches, bottles, and the warped remains of a feed trough. Near noon, a sheet of corrugated metal surfaced beneath the mud. Mara hooked it with the oar and pulled. It moved suddenly, freeing one sharp corner. The metal sliced through her jeans below the knee. She fell backward into shallow water. For a moment, she felt nothing but the humiliation of landing on her backside. Then blood spread through the wet denim. Ruth reached her before she managed to stand. "Don't move. I'm fine. You're bleeding in water that killed a carp last week." That was probably unrelated. Ruth cut the jeans open around the wound with a pocket knife. The gash was 3 inches long, deep enough to gape when Mara bent her leg. "You need stitches. I need a bandage. You need someone with medical training to decide that. I don't have insurance. Bodies don't offer a cash discount." Mara looked at the pump still running, the hose shuddering with each pulse. "I can't leave it. I can shut down an engine. The gearbox overheats after 6 hours. I can read a clock." Ruth cleaned the cut in the barn bathroom, while Mara gripped the sink and invented new uses for familiar profanity. The bleeding slowed under pressure. It should have been stitched. Mara knew it. She also knew the clinic deposit would take the money meant for her truck. Ruth applied butterfly closures, antibiotic ointment, and a bandage thick enough to protect furniture during a move. If this gets red, hot, or swollen, you go in, she said. It's already red. Redder. It's June in Arkansas. Everything's hot. Mara, I'll watch it. Ruth tied off the bandage and sat back on her heels. You don't have to prove you deserve the farm by letting it eat you. Mara looked down at the clean white gauze. I'm not proving anything. Ruth's expression said she had heard that one too. That evening, Mara returned to the loft, despite the ache in her leg. She lowered herself beside the wall and examined the grease pencil marks. The water had fallen another 1.25 inches. Below the newest line, the dates marched downward. Above it, most of the wall remained untouched. The cut began throbbing before dawn. Mara woke with her legs stretched outside the mosquito net and the lantern still burning. The bandage felt tight. When she peeled back one edge, the skin around the butterfly closures was pink and puffy. Not redder, she decided, differently red. She swallowed 2 pain relievers with warm bottled water and climbed down to the boat. Her knee resisted bending, so she lowered herself awkwardly, catching one elbow on the ladder. The temporary pump had stopped. She found it tilted toward the channel, one wheel sunk deep in softened ground. The intake drum had drifted against the bank, pulling the hose into a kink. Mara straightened the frame with a length of rope tied to a pecan tree and dug beneath the wheel with a shovel. By the time Ruth arrived, Mara had the engine running again and mud to both elbows. Ruth stepped from her boat. How's the leg? Still attached. That wasn't the question. It's fine. Show me. We have a weather problem. Dark clouds were building along the northern horizon. The air had the stale heaviness that came before rain. Ruth did not look. Show me the leg. Mara pulled up the cut flap of her jeans. Ruth touched the skin beside the bandage with 2 fingers. That's hot. It's under denim in June. You're going to the clinic. After we move the pump. We need to move it now. Forecast changed overnight. They're saying 3 to 5 inches. If we run it until the rain starts, we can drop the field another inch. If the channel rises, that motor will be underwater. Then we pull it when the channel rises. Ruth stood. You believe every bad situation can be negotiated with if you stay long enough. Most machines can. You are not a machine. I know. Machines get replacement parts. Ruth stared at her, anger and worry working against each other. We run it until noon, she said. Then we move it to high ground whether the sky is blue, black, or full of dancing angels. Fine. And you call the clinic. Fine. You're lying. I'm agreeing under protest. That isn't what lying means. The first rain arrived at 11:30, soft enough to seem harmless. Mara kept the pump running. At noon, the field had fallen almost 3/4 of an inch below the newest wall mark. Ruth shut the fuel valve. Time. The channel hasn't risen. Time. They loaded tools into the boat and disconnected the discharge hose. Rain streaked the water. As Ruth backed her truck down the lane, the rear tires slipped on the newly exposed mud. Mara took the tractor from Ruth's farm and eased it through the gate. They fastened a chain to the pump frame, but the sunken wheel held. The tractor pulled sideways. Stop, Ruth shouted. Mara stopped. If you drag it like that, you'll bend the axle. The ground's washing out under it. Then we jack it. They placed boards beneath a bottle jack and lifted the frame 1 inch at a time. Rainwater ran down Mara's neck and into her shirt. Her injured leg shook whenever she put weight on it, but she kept the knee locked and worked from the other side. The jack slipped. The pump dropped hard. Mud splashed both of them. Ruth wiped her face. Clinic. After. If you say after one more time, I'm leaving you here and taking the motor. Mara's phone rang in her pocket. Sandy's name glowed on the wet screen. You coming in? Sandy asked. Mara looked at the pump, the stuck wheel, and the clouds turning the afternoon almost dark. I'm trying to get equipment out before the storm. Your shift starts in 40 minutes. I know. Carl already called out. His back. I can be there by 6. Dinner starts at 5. I'm sorry. Sandy was quiet. Pots clanged in the diner kitchen behind her. All right, she said finally. 6, not 6:15. I'll be there. The rain became a sheet 5 minutes later. Ruth's truck spun when she tried pulling from the road. Mara moved the tractor to firmer ground, ran a longer chain, and felt the injured leg buckle as she climbed down. Ruth caught her arm. You're burning up. I'm wet. You're shaking. I'm cold. It's 84 degrees. Thunder rolled over the field. Together, they dug the wheel free and laid fence boards beneath it. The tractor strained, tires slipping. Then the pump frame lurched forward. One hose clamp caught the ground and snapped. The freed hose whipped into the channel. Mara went after it without thinking. Water rose to her thighs. Mud closed around her boots. She grabbed the hose as the current pulled it toward the outlet, but broken mesh snagged around her ankle. For one sharp second, she could not move. Craig's warning returned with irritating precision. "You understand it as information. That's different." Ruth splashed in behind her, cut the mesh, and shoved the hose into the boat. "What is wrong with you?" Ruth shouted. "I had it. You were caught. For 2 seconds. That is enough time to drown if you cooperate." Mara tried to step and nearly fell. Ruth hooked an arm around her waist. The white bandage beneath Mara's torn jeans had turned brown with floodwater. They got the pump onto high ground at 4:50. Mara texted Sandy that she would be late, then sat in Ruth's truck with the heater blowing because she could not stop shivering. She closed her eyes for what felt like a minute. When she opened them, it was after 7. Ruth was driving toward town. "Where are we going?" "Clinic, my shift." "You missed it." Mara grabbed her phone. 3 calls from the diner, 2 from Kelsey, 1 from Craig. "Turn around." "No." "I need that job." "You need antibiotics." "I told Sandy 6. "You were unconscious at 6. I was sleeping. You didn't wake when I changed your bandage." Mara looked down. Clean gauze wrapped her lower leg. "You changed my clothes?" "Your jeans." "I left the rest because neither of us deserves that." The clinic gave Mara a tetanus shot, oral antibiotics, and a lecture from a tired physician whose sympathy ended precisely where stupidity began. The wound was infected but had not spread deeply. He marked the edge of the redness with a pen and told her to return if it crossed the line. At the desk, Mara paid the minimum deposit with the money from her truck envelope. Outside, rain hammered the clinic awning. Ruth held the keys out of Mara's reach. "You're sleeping at my house. The loft's dry. The road won't be. The motor's safe. In the barn, my tools, in the boat under cover. The main engine will remain broken without your supervision." Mara called Sandy from Ruth's passenger seat. "I'm sorry," she said when Sandy answered. "So am I. I have an infection. I was at the clinic. You could have called?" "I did. I said 6. "You said 6, then didn't answer for 3 hours." Mara pressed her forehead to the cool window. "I can work tomorrow. You sound terrible. I'll sound better in person." "Mara, I need people who arrive. I liked you. That doesn't seat tables. Give me one more shift." Sandy sighed. "Tomorrow at 5. If you're late or call out, I'm done." Mara promised. She slept in Ruth's spare room beneath a quilt so heavy it seemed intended to prevent escape. Rain sounded against the metal roof all night. Fever dreams carried her through the pump house, where water climbed the walls and erased every grease pencil mark. In the morning, Ruth stood in the doorway holding Mara's phone. Kelsey's called 4 times. "I'll call her back." She called me too. Mara opened her eyes. "How does she have your number?" "You gave it to her when she wanted to know where you were staying." "I did not authorize communication." "You were asleep, not under federal protection." Mara pushed herself upright. Her leg hurt less, but the redness had reached the physician's ink line. "Did you tell her about the clinic?" "I told her you cut your leg." "Ruth." "And that it got infected." "Ruth." "And that you went into floodwater after a hose." Mara dropped back against the pillows. "Did you provide diagrams?" "I would have, but she was already upset." Kelsey answered Mara's return call with, "What the hell is wrong with you?" "Good morning. You got an infection and didn't tell me. It was a cut. You went to a clinic. That's what people do when they make sensible medical decisions." Ruth said she had to force you. Ruth has a dramatic streak. From the hallway, Ruth said, "I can still hear everything." Kelsey lowered her voice, which accomplished nothing. "Mom knows." Mara sat up again. "Why?" "Because I told her." "Why?" "Because you are sleeping in a barn in another state with a fever. It's a house. That is not the correction I need. I don't want her here." "Well, she left Memphis an hour ago." Mara swung her legs off the bed. The room moved sideways. "You told her to come?" "I told her what happened. Apparently she knows how roads work." Mara ended the call and began pulling on clean jeans. Ruth appeared with a glass of water. "You are not going to the farm," she said. "I have a shift. Not until 5. I have to check the water." The field filled overnight. Mara stopped with one leg in her jeans. "How much?" "Most of what we gained is gone." The words settled more heavily than they should have. Mara had known the little pump could not hold against serious rain. Knowledge did not make the erased work easier to bear. She dressed anyway. At the diner, Sandy took one look at her and said, "Go home. I can work. You're sweating through your shirt. It's hot. You're leaning on the pie case. I like pie." Sandy's expression softened, which frightened Mara more than anger. "Go rest. Come tomorrow." "You said if I missed, I know what I said. I need the shift. I need someone who won't fall into table 6. I won't." Mara made it through 20 minutes. Then she dropped a tray of water glasses because her hand would not stop shaking. Sandy removed the apron from Mara's waist herself. "I'm sorry," she said. "I can't keep doing this." Mara looked at the broken glasses sparkling in the water on the floor. "I understand." She walked outside carrying her 2 black shirts in a paper bag. Diane's car was parked beside Mara's truck at Ruth's when she returned. Her mother stood near the barn, in pressed tan pants and impractical shoes, arguing with Ruth. Grocery sacks sat on the hood of her car. The sight of them brought back the jar of spaghetti sauce rolling beneath Kelsey's kitchen table. Diane saw Mara and stopped speaking. Her gaze dropped to the bandage visible through the slit in Mara's jeans, then rose to Mara's pale face. "Oh, honey." Mara stayed beside the truck. "Don't." Diane crossed the distance anyway. "Get in my car. I'm not going home. You have an infected wound. I have antibiotics. You lost your job. News traveled through family faster than floodwater. I'll find another one. You are coming with me." Mara pulled the paper bag of diner shirts against her chest. "You don't get to lie to me for 29 years and then arrive like you're the only person who knows what's good for me." Diane flinched but did not retreat. "I'm still your mother." "Yes." That's why it mattered. Rainwater dripped from the barn roof between them. Diane looked past Mara toward the distant pecan line. The flooding was not visible from Ruth's yard, but something in her face changed as she studied the low horizon. "How high did it get?" she asked. Mara said nothing. "The water," Diane said. "Did it reach the bottom limbs?" Ruth folded her arms. "Near enough." Diane closed her eyes briefly. Then she removed her good shoes, placed them beneath the car, and opened the trunk. Inside was a pair of old rubber farm boots. Mara stared at the boots. They were black rubber, cracked white at the bends and stained with reddish mud that had survived years of disuse. Diane pulled them from the trunk as if they were ordinary things she had remembered to pack along with toothpaste. "You kept farm boots?" "Oh," Mara asked. Diane set them on the gravel. "I kept a lot of things I didn't look at. That seems to be your system." Ruth shifted her weight, but stayed out of it. Diane removed her tan pants from beneath a pair of jeans in the trunk and held them up. "Is there somewhere I can change?" Ruth pointed toward the barn bathroom. "You're not staying," Mara said. Diane shut the trunk. "You can barely stand." "I can stand." "You're using the truck. The truck likes to feel needed. I drove 4 hours. No one asked you to." Diane looked at her, tiredness deepening the lines beside her mouth. "You're right." The agreement left Mara with nowhere to push. Diane carried the jeans into the barn. Ruth waited until the bathroom door closed. "Your mother brought boots," she said. "I can see that. People don't usually pack the right shoes for places they refuse to discuss." Mara sat on the truck's running board. "Are you going to analyze her all day?" "No. I have work." "Good. You're coming with me to the field. You said I shouldn't." "I've reconsidered. Your mother can watch you. I don't require supervision. Then call it an audience. You enjoy those." Diane emerged in jeans, an old blue work shirt, and the boots. The clothes changed her, not into someone younger exactly, but into a version of herself Mara had never been allowed to imagine. Diane tucked her hair into a baseball cap and surveyed Ruth's tractor. "You still have that Massey?" she asked. Ruth's eyebrows rose. "It still starts. It always started. Stopping was the issue." Ruth gave Mara a small, satisfied look. "Don't," Mara said. They loaded the temporary pump onto the trailer. Diane reached for one end of the discharge hose, and Mara took it from her. "I can carry that. I didn't say you couldn't. You were about to." I was about to carry the other end. They carried it between them without further negotiation. The rain had raised the flood nearly to Mara's previous highest mark. Her newest grease pencil lines were underwater. Debris covered the lane again, and the county ditch ran fast and brown. Diane stood at the gate for a long moment. The old boots sank slightly into the mud. Her fingers tightened around the hose. "What?" Mara asked. "Nothing. You're staring at it. I remember when that sycamore was struck." Mara followed her gaze to a split tree along the eastern boundary. "When?" "Before you were born." The answer contained a whole landscape Diane had never spoken of. Mara hated her for having it and wanted every inch. Ruth backed the tractor carefully down the lane while Mara guided the pump frame. Diane walked ahead, testing the mud with a shovel. She knew where the submerged drainage channel curved before Ruth pointed it out. "You worked here one summer?" Mara asked. Diane did not turn. "Part of two." That's what Ruth said. Ruth remembers what's useful to her. Mostly. Ruth called from the tractor. "I also remember you backed a grain truck into Lenora's clothesline." Diane glanced over her shoulder. The line was behind the shed. It had been there 12 years. Then she had 12 years to put it somewhere sensible. For one instant, Ruth smiled. Diane did too. Mara watched the expression pass between them and felt excluded from something that had happened before she existed. It was not jealousy exactly. It was the ache of arriving at a table after everyone had eaten. They positioned the pump near the road, on ground protected by a layer of boards. The little engine turned but would not draw water. Mara checked the coupling, filled the intake, and pulled the cord until her injured leg trembled. Diane crouched beside the hose. The foot valve's not holding. It was holding before. The rain probably pushed grit into it. I cleaned the screen. The screen isn't the valve. I know that. Diane looked at her. "Then why are you arguing? Because you've been here 10 minutes. And you don't get to become useful enough that everything else disappears." Diane sat back on her heels. "I know," she said. Again, no defense. Mara wished she would offer one so anger could remain simple. Diane disconnected the intake, flushed it backward, and tapped the valve body against a board. A pebble no larger than a fingernail fell into her palm. She held it up. Mara took the valve without thanking her. They filled the hose again. Diane loosened the priming cap at exactly the right moment while Mara pulled the starter. The engine coughed, caught, and began drawing water. The hose jumped beneath Diane's hands. Ruth watched the outlet spill into the ditch. Still remembers. "Some things stay in your body," Diane said. The words seemed aimed at no one. They took the boat to the pump house. Diane sat in the boat, looking over the pecan rows, as if counting absences. When the building came into view, she removed her cap. Mara tied them to the ladder. "Have you been inside?" "Yes." "With Thomas?" Diane looked up at the loft window. "With everyone." That pump failed whenever the temperature was worst, or somebody had somewhere important to be. She climbed before Mara could stop her. Ruth remained in the boat with Mara. "You shouldn't climb on that leg. I know." "Good. We've made progress." Above them, metal scraped, then silence. Mara climbed anyway. Diane stood in front of the steel cabinet with one hand against its gray door. Her thumb had found the old letters beneath the paint. "He used to keep peppermints in here," she said. "Paula said candy. Paula stole most of it. Lenora threw it out. She did that too." Diane opened the cabinet. The service manuals sat where Mara had left them. She pulled out one in its plastic sleeve and traced Thomas's handwriting without touching the page. "She kept his records," Mara said. Lenora kept proof. Of what? That she had carried whatever someone else dropped. Below, Ruth started the boat motor. "I'm checking the south gate," she called. "Try not to kill each other before I get back. Paperwork irritates me." The boat moved away. Mara lowered herself onto the camping mat. Her leg pulsed beneath the bandage. Diane remained by the cabinet. "Tell me about the letters," Mara said. Diane's shoulders tightened. "Paula said Lenora asked for my address 7 years ago." "She did." "What did Lenora send?" "A letter." "Thank you." This is already illuminating. Diane closed the cabinet. "She said the farm was going to be divided eventually. She wanted to know whether you would come meet her. And you answered?" "No." "Did you show it to me?" "No." "Where is it?" "I burned it." The pump house seemed to tilt beneath Mara, though the water was calm. "You burned it?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was afraid." "Of Lenora?" "Of you." Mara laughed once. "I was 22. "I know." "You were afraid I'd run away with a farmer?" "I was afraid you'd look at her and see everything I wasn't." Diane sat on the edge of the loft window, facing inside. She had the house, she said, the farm, his name. She knew how to fix things, how to make people keep their promises. I spent years telling myself she had driven me away because that made me the wounded one. Did she? She drove me to the bus station. Mara waited. When Thomas kept saying he needed more time, I went to Lenora. I thought I was forcing the choice. I thought, once she saw me, once I told her you were coming, everything would break open. Diane rubbed her palms over her jeans. She listened. That was worse than if she'd screamed. Then she asked how much money I had. I thought she was insulting me. I called her every name I knew. What did she do? Packed me lunch. Put cash in an envelope. Drove me to the station. The ordinary details hurt in ways betrayal did not. A lunch, an envelope. Lenora returning home afterward to the man who had humiliated her. She told me you hadn't made any of it, Diane said. She said none of us got to make you pay. Mara looked through the window toward the flooded trees. But you did. Diane bowed her head. Yes. Every time you said I was like him. Yes. Every time I wanted to know his name. Yes. You made him a drifter because the truth made you look bad. Yes. Mara's anger rose against the repeated agreement, hot and directionless. Stop saying yes like it's an apology. It isn't. Then what is it? The truth. Late. Mara pushed herself up too fast. Pain shot through her leg. There was another letter, she said. Paula said Lenora tried more than once. Diane looked at the floor. After Thomas died, she said. She sent one through a lawyer. I returned it unopened. You don't know what it said? No. And 7 years ago? I read that one. She wanted to meet me. Yes. Did she say why? She wrote that Thomas's share would not go to Craig. She said you could visit if you wanted to understand what that meant. And you burned it. I told myself Lenora wanted to use you against a dead man. Against me. Did she? I don't know. You made sure I couldn't decide. Yes. The word broke this time. Mara turned toward the wall. The flood had washed above the newest marks, softening the grease pencil into gray smears. She died, Mara said. I can't ask her anything. I know. I was never going to get a father. Fine. He made that choice. But I could have met her. I know. You don't get to be sad about that. Diane's mouth twisted. I'm not asking permission? Then why are you here? Because Kelsey said you were hurt. That's the only reason? No. Diane stood. I'm here because I saw Lenora's name on that letter and realized she had done what she said. She didn't make you pay. She waited until she could give back the part Thomas should have answered for. She gave me a flooded field. It wasn't flooded when she wrote the will. Craig let it flood. Diane's expression sharpened. What do you mean? Mara showed her the missing starter mounts, the capped fuel line, and Lenora's final service note. Diane examined the engine from the ladder, moving carefully but without hesitation. Craig says a mechanic removed the parts. Craig says things politely when he wants them to stop being questioned. You know him? I knew him at 20. He used to hide broken equipment so Lenora wouldn't make him repair it before Saturday. That sounds exactly like him. It doesn't mean he flooded the farm on purpose. No. It means he let the parcel fail because he expected to own it. Diane looked at the engine a moment longer. Where would he keep parts? Mara asked. If Lenora was still running this place, in the North Machine Shed. Labeled, on a shelf. Craig owns the shed. Yes. So useful information remains useless. Sometimes it has to wait. Mara stared at her. That sounds like your life philosophy. I deserve that. I'm not trying to be funny, neither am I. Ruth returned with news that the southern gate was clear, but the outlet bank had eroded. They needed sandbags before more rain. Diane climbed into the boat and asked how many. Ruth said, 200 maybe. I'll pay for them. Mara answered before Ruth could. No. Diane looked at her. Why? Because I don't want money to become the thing that fixes this. It won't. You don't know that. I know it can't. Diane's voice was quiet. I'm not buying forgiveness, Mara. I'm buying bags. They worked until dark, filling them with sand from a pile behind Ruth's barn. Diane's hands blistered within an hour. She wrapped them in tape and continued. She did not complain about the heat, the mud, or Mara's refusal to speak. When they finished, Diane carried groceries into Ruth's kitchen and made soup as though feeding people were another piece of machinery she knew how to keep running. Mara ate at the table with her leg elevated. Ruth talked about the weather. Diane answered only when asked. At bedtime, Diane brought a pillow and blanket to the spare room floor. "There's a sofa in the office," Mara said. "It squeaks." Despite herself, Mara looked at her. Diane lay down on the floor. "I'm staying until your fever's gone. That doesn't mean I forgive you. I know. You can't keep agreeing with everything. I can try to be less irritating tomorrow." "That would be new." Diane switched off the lamp. In the dark, Mara could hear her mother settling onto the hard floor and trying not to make a sound. Mara woke to the smell of bacon and the realization that the floor beside the bed was empty. For one frightened second, she thought Diane had left. Then a cabinet closed in the kitchen, followed by Ruth saying, "That is not where I keep skillets." "It is now," Diane answered. Mara checked her leg. The redness had retreated inside the pen line. Her fever was gone, though the cut pulled when she stood. In the kitchen, Diane had prepared eggs, bacon, toast, and enough coffee for an agricultural conference. Ruth sat at the table studying a weather map on her tablet. "The river's rising faster than predicted," Ruth said. "County may close the main floodgate by this afternoon." Mara lowered herself into a chair. "Then our outlet stops." "Partly. Water can still move through the upper bypass, but not enough for another hard rain." Diane placed a plate in front of Mara. "Eat first. The weather doesn't pause for breakfast." "No? People just make worse decisions hungry." Mara looked at the plate. "Was that Lenora? That was me." "Hard to tell." Diane sat across from her. "You don't have to make every sentence hurt." "No. Some come that way." Ruth slid the tablet into the center of the table. A band of storms stretched across Missouri and northern Arkansas. "By tomorrow night, this place either has the main pump or it has more water than last week," she said. Mara ate half the eggs without tasting them. They finished the sandbag wall before noon. Diane worked beside Ruth while Mara moved more slowly, carrying half-filled bags and pretending not to notice when they quietly reduced the weight. A small car bounced down the lane just as Ruth's phone sounded a weather alert. Paula stopped near the gate, got out in mud-colored jeans this time, and opened her trunk. Inside lay a large black starter motor. No one spoke for several seconds. Paula put both hands on her hips. "I found it behind a stack of spray tanks in Craig's machine shed." Mara walked closer. Mud and grease marked the housing, but the mounting pattern looked right. "Did Craig give it to you?" "He doesn't know I have it. That sounds less like giving. The shed was mine until Lenora's estate transferred." "No, it went to Craig," I said until. Diane examined the taped wiring leads. Lenora used to mark equipment. Paula turned the starter. A faded stripe of yellow paint ran around the casing. Beneath the grime, South was written in black marker. Ruth whistled softly. Paula looked at Mara. "I'm sorry." "For finding it? For not looking sooner?" "Where's the fuel assembly?" "Not there. Did you ask Craig?" "I called him from the shed. He told me to stay out of things I didn't understand." Ruth lifted a sandbag. "That line improves with age." Mara set the starter in Ruth's boat and wrapped it in a tarp. "He'll come." "He's already on his way," Paula said. They reached the pump house before him. Mara mounted the starter, while Diane dried the connection leads and Ruth checked the belts. The bolts threaded smoothly into the clean holes. The engine still lacked a way to receive fuel. Mara rigged a gravity feed from a small tank, but the injector pump needed the missing assembly's filter housing and lift pump. She could improvise some of it, not all of it before the storm. Craig's boat appeared between the pecan rows, throwing a broad wake. He cut the motor 20 feet from the building and drifted toward them. "Paula," he said. She sat in Ruth's boat with her arms folded. "Craig, you removed equipment from my shed. I returned equipment to the structure it belonged to. That starter was part of the estate inventory. So was this pump. It was being stored behind empty tanks because the shelves were full." Ruth looked through the pump house window. A compelling system. Craig ignored her. His gaze found Diane, and the anger went out of his face. Diane Reed. Craig. He removed his cap. For a moment, he was no longer the man who had offered $6,000 for flooded ground. He was someone looking at a person from a sealed part of his life. "You look like your mother," he said. "I should hope so. She complained often enough." "You heard about Lenora?" "Too late." Craig's eyes moved to Mara. "You brought her here." "Kelsey did, indirectly." "I came on my own," Diane said. It's a habit people keep confusing with my daughters. Thunder sounded far north. Mara leaned out the loft window. Where's the fuel assembly? Craig put his cap back on. The original was cracked. Where is it? It's in use. On what? My auxiliary irrigation pump. Paula stared at him. You took it from the south pump. I moved it. Lenora's engine was already down. Her note says the starter was sticking, not that the engine was down. She couldn't keep records properly after the stroke. Diane's face hardened. Her left hand stopped working. Her right one still knew a lie. Craig gripped the side of his boat. You don't know what that year was like. No, Diane said. But I know Lenora. You knew her 30 years ago. And you knew she hadn't changed. Rain began as dark circles on the water. Craig looked toward the sky. That engine won't run. The injector's probably seized. The intake is buried. Even if you start it, the main gate is closing. The upper bypass is open, Ruth said. If we reinforce the outlet, we can move enough water. With what labor? 3 diesel engines answered from the county road. Tractors appeared beyond the flooded gate, each pulling a trailer. One carried sandbags, another held coiled drainage hose. The third hauled a portable pump twice the size of Ruth's. Ruth smiled. That labor. The drivers launched 2 more flat-bottomed boats. Earl Hawkins, whose rice acreage lay east of the sycamores, brought his portable pump. Joe Alvarez and her brother Mateo brought hose and fuel. All 3 were gray-haired, sunburned, and uninterested in introductions longer than necessary. Earl tied his boat beside Craig's. Heard Lenora's south field was going under. It's Mara's field now, Ruth said. Earl looked at Mara in the loft. Then she ought to stop bleeding on it. My leg's fine. That means it isn't, Joe said. Craig watched them unload. You're moving water into a closed drainage system, he said. You'll back it onto my north fields. Mateo pointed toward the dark line beyond the pecans. Your north ditch is already backing up. Fence trash is caught at the junction. I sent a man to clear it. When? This morning. He get lost? Craig's jaw tightened. I can handle my own drainage. Then handle it, Ruth said. We're here for hers. The distinction struck him. Mara saw it in the way his shoulders settled. These were people Craig had known his entire life. They were not threatening or condemning him. They had simply arrived and placed their labor somewhere else. Earl fueled his portable pump. Lenora ran that old diesel 4 days straight when the East Levee broke in '08. Saved half my rice. Joe connected sections of hose. She kept our water off too. She charged you, Craig said. Diesel, Joe replied. Not obedience. Rain thickened, ticking against the pump house roof. Mara climbed down into Ruth's boat. Her leg protested, but held. Give me the fuel assembly, she told Craig. I need it. So do I. My north pump protects 400 acres. Then you should have maintained the system that drains all of it. You think this is revenge? No. I think it's water. The first lightning flashed beyond the sycamores. Craig looked at the tractors, hoses, and boats moving around him. Paula did not meet his eyes. Diane stood beside Mara, muddy to the elbows. Even Ruth had stopped enjoying herself. Craig started his outboard. I'll be back, he said. No one thanked him. While he was gone, they cleared the junction ditch and positioned the portable pump. The rain drove sideways. Sandbags sank into the eroding outlet bank, each one requiring 3 pairs of hands. Mara worked until the physician's ink line reappeared beneath water running down her leg. Diane noticed and sent her to the loft with a look so familiar that Mara obeyed before remembering she was angry. From above, she directed the wiring. Paula cleaned the starter terminals. Ruth opened the engine inspection plates and turned the flywheel by hand. It moves, Ruth called. Slowly? Stiff, not locked. Pull the injectors. We'll oil the cylinders. Craig returned 40 minutes later. A metal fuel assembly sat in his boat. He held it for a moment before passing it up. I was going to replace it, he said. When? Paula asked. When I could afford it. You offered Mara $6,000. For land that would keep flooding without this system. Diane looked at him. You let it become worthless, then priced it that way. I kept the North operation alive. Seed, fuel, payroll. Lenora left me a farm with no cash and equipment older than I am. She left you the good acreage, Paula said. She left me the part that had to support everything else. Mara examined the assembly. It had been cleaned recently and fitted with a new filter. You used my parts because your field was more important, she said. Yes. The honesty silenced them. Craig wiped rain from his face. I thought Lenora would change the will. When she didn't, I thought you'd sell. I wasn't trying to drown pecan trees. You just didn't care if they drowned. I cared about what I could save. Mara understood the sentence too well. Diane had lived by a version of it. So had Lenora. So, perhaps, had Mara each time she chose a broken thing because fixing it was easier than facing something alive. She handed Craig a wrench. Then, help save this. He looked at it. You can leave, she said. But the north ditch is still rising. Craig took the wrench. They worked through the afternoon. The fuel assembly fit. Mara replaced the cleaned relays and bypassed the ruined hour meter. Craig bled air from the injector lines. Diane found the old priming can in the loft cabinet and filled the intake housing. Ruth cleared the grate with Earl's pump, reducing the water around it. At dusk, they were ready. Mara stood at the control box. Everyone else had moved outside, though no one admitted fear of the belts. She pressed the starter. The engine groaned once and stopped. Again. The starter turned longer this time. Smoke curled from the exhaust stack. Give it fuel, Craig called. I am. More. It'll flood. It's already flooded. Mara glared through the window, then advanced the lever. On the fourth attempt, the engine fired twice. On the fifth, it caught. The pump house shook. Black smoke burst above the roof. The belt snapped taut. And deep beneath the water, the main impeller began to turn. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the outlet pipe roared. A solid column of brown water struck the upper channel hard enough to shake the sandbag wall. No one cheered at first. They simply stared. The old system had resumed its work, indifferent to who had inherited what, who had lied, and who had finally returned the missing pieces. Mara placed her palm against the vibrating control box. Outside, Diane laughed. It was not a polite sound. It came from somewhere deep, young, and startled. Mara had never heard it before. The sound spread. Ruth whooped from the boat. Earl slapped the side of the pump house with both hands. Jo lifted her face into the rain and shouted something the engine swallowed. Even Paula laughed, though hers came with tears she wiped away as if they were only water. Craig did not cheer. He stood at the outlet watching the sandbag wall tremble beneath the force. Too much pressure on the west side, he called. It'll cut under. The celebration lasted 7 seconds. They redirected Earl's portable hose and reinforced the bank. The main pump had only one speed it trusted, and that speed was violence. Water surged through the channel, carrying sticks, foam, and years of accumulated leaves. The storm intensified after dark. Lightning flashed so often the flooded field appeared in white, frozen pieces. Pecan trunks, bent fence, boats tied high against the building. Mara tried to climb down, but Diane blocked the ladder. You're done. I need to check the intake. Ruth is checking it. The relay might overheat. Craig is watching it. Craig is the reason we're here. Then let him be useful. Mara looked past her. Craig stood waist-deep beside the grate, tethered to the pump house by a rope while Ruth cleared debris from the boat. Every few minutes, Paula hauled the rope tight to keep him from drifting into the channel. He could get caught, Mara said. So could you. That's different? Explain. Mara could not. Diane sat beside Thomas's cabinet and retaped the blisters on her hands. Mud streaked her face. Her wet hair had escaped the baseball cap and curled around her ears in a way Mara had not seen since old photographs. Why did you stop working here? Mara asked. Diane bit the tape. You know why? No. I know how you left. I couldn't remain in town. People looked at me like I had stolen something and then been foolish enough to leave fingerprints. You had. Yes. The answer no longer sounded like surrender. It sounded like practice. Did you love him? Mara asked. Diane smoothed the tape around her palm. I loved how I felt when he looked at me. I thought that was the same thing. Did he love you? He loved promises. The moment before anyone expected him to keep one. Below them, the engine shuddered as a branch struck the intake. Mara flinched. Diane did too, though her hands remained still. Lenora knew how to stay, Diane said. I used to think that meant she had won. Did it? No. The pump ran through the night. By dawn, the storm had moved east. Low clouds dragged across the fields, but the rain softened to mist. The water had fallen below the top of the pump house door. Muddy walls, ruined shelving, and the engine's lower casing appeared inch by inch. Craig climbed into the loft with shaking arms and collapsed against the wall. Paula handed him a bottle of water. "You smell terrible." "I've been standing in a ditch." "You smelled bad before." He drank half the bottle without answering. Mara checked the control box. The cleaned relays were warm, but holding. The belts ran straight. Fuel consumption was worse than she hoped, but Earl had brought enough diesel to keep the engine going until noon. Craig sat with his eyes closed. "The North Junction is moving." "Your field's okay?" Mara asked. "Wet, not drowned. You're welcome." He opened his eyes. "I should have brought the parts back in April," he said. No one rescued him from the admission. Paula leaned against the window frame. "Yes." Craig looked at Mara. "I kept telling myself I was borrowing them. Then Lenora died, and it became easier to call them mine. That happens a lot around inheritance. I suppose you'd know." The remark sharpened the air. Craig winced as soon as he said it. Mara waited for the apology. He looked away. "Almost," she said. "I'm tired. So is everybody." He rubbed both hands over his face. "I'm sorry." "For that sentence?" "For the sentence, the pump, the offer." 6,000 was insulting. In present condition, it wasn't. Paula groaned. "Craig." "What?" "Apology doesn't change the soil." Mara looked through the window. Water still covered most of the property, but the nearest roots were visible. "No," she said. "Work does." He met her eyes, and something settled between them. Not forgiveness, not even trust. The recognition that neither one would be easy to remove. When the water finally left the pecan rows, it revealed a farm that looked beaten rather than saved. Fish lay in shallow depressions. Fence wire curled through the mud. The gravel lane had become two washed-out trenches with a ridge of weeds between them. 12 pecan trees were dead. 9 more might not recover. Ruth scraped bark from each questionable trunk and refused to offer false optimism. "This one's green," she would say. Or, "This one's thinking about it." Or simply, "No." Mara painted a small mark on every surviving tree. The work took 2 days. Diane followed with a notebook, recording which limbs needed pruning and where the ground remained too soft for equipment. At tree number 46, Mara stopped. "You don't have to stay," she said. Diane capped the pen. "Do you want me to leave?" "I don't know. That's not the same thing." "No?" Diane touched the marked bark. "I need to go back eventually. My house, my job." "You took a week off?" "I said there had been a family emergency." Mara looked around the ruined orchard. "Accurate. I can come back. You don't have to turn this into penance." "I'm not?" "What is it then?" Diane considered before answering. A chance to do the next thing honestly. Mara looked at her mother's blistered hands. "That sounds like Lenora. I learned some useful things here." Diane left 2 days later. She did not attempt a hug in Ruth's driveway. She placed a grocery bag in Mara's truck containing clean bandages, canned soup, and cash. Mara handed the cash back. "I told you, for fuel," Diane said. "No. You accepted sandbags. The farm needed those immediately." "And it doesn't need diesel?" "It does. I'll earn it." Diane took the money without arguing. "Call if the fever comes back. I will. Even if you're angry. I'm still angry. I know." Mara hugged her anyway. The embrace was brief and badly organized. Diane held on 1 second longer than Mara did, then released her without asking what it meant. The main pump continued running in scheduled stretches until the southern acreage drained. Mara cleaned the pump house from the floor upward. She shoveled silt, replaced wiring, dried tools, and scrubbed old oil from the cinder blocks. Craig returned the next week with filters, belts, and 3 cans of diesel. "I didn't ask for these," Mara said. "No." "Are you charging me?" "No." "Is this an apology?" "It's maintenance." "That's not what I asked." Craig set the supplies beside the door. "It's what I have." She accepted it. He also removed the last of his temporary fence from the drainage junction and repaired the washed-out section of lane with gravel left from his North Road project. He did both without an announcement. Paula told Mara anyway. The transfer papers arrived at Ruth's house. Mara signed them on the workshop desk, while the repaired irrigation gearbox turned quietly on a test stand nearby. Her name looked strange beside the legal description, too ordinary for 68 acres, and all the damage attached to them. The back taxes remained. Her truck solved that problem by beginning to knock on the drive into town. A mechanic offered enough to pay off the loan and leave Mara with $1,400. Kelsey objected when Mara called to ask where the title had been mailed. "You need transportation," she said. "I need to avoid repossession. You're selling the only valuable thing you own. I own a farm, a flooded farm, mostly drained. That is not as comforting as you think." Mara used part of the remaining money for taxes and saved the rest for seed. Ruth lent her an old farm pickup whose driver's door opened only from the outside. "You're trusting me with a vehicle?" Mara asked. "I'm trusting you with something no thief could resell." By August, Green returned to the surviving orchard floor. The damaged southern field dried unevenly, its low areas remaining soft long after the rest cracked in the heat. Mara brought Ruth soil samples in coffee cans. Ruth poured them across the workbench and broke the clods between her fingers. "Stop trying to make the low ground behave like high ground," she said. "What does that mean?" "Rice. I don't grow rice. You don't grow anything yet. That feels unnecessarily precise. We rotate the open acreage, rice where it stays wet, cover crop on the damaged sections. Pecans remain pecans. I provide equipment and experience. You provide land and labor. We split after costs. 50-50, 60-40. Which direction? Mine, 50-50. You don't own a combine. You don't own my field," Ruth smiled. "You're learning?" They settled at 55 to Ruth for the first season, even the following year if Mara learned the work. The orchard's surviving trees produced a smaller crop than normal, but not nothing. Nuts began filling the branches as summer thinned toward fall. Mara found repair work among the same neighbors who had brought tractors in the storm. She fixed Earl's grain auger motor, rewired Joe's shed, and replaced Mateo's irrigation controls. Payment came in cash, diesel, meals, and once an entire truckload of fence posts. She called Kelsey without asking for money. The first call lasted 4 minutes. The second lasted 11. On the third, Kelsey said, "Mom told me about the letters." Mara sat beneath the pump house window, looking over the dry lane. "She told you everything?" "She says she did." "Do you believe her?" "I believe she thinks she did." That was more complicated than yes, and therefore probably true. "I'm sorry," Mara said. "For what?" "For making your help sound small because it wasn't the help I wanted." Kelsey was quiet. "You did make the sofa sound small," she said. "The bar was aggressive. I slept on it after you left. It's fine. You weigh less. That is not an apology," Mara smiled. "Harvest starts in 3 weeks. Is that an invitation? I could use help. Not money, no, work." Kelsey did not answer immediately. Mara listened to the main pump cycling below, steady now, the sound traveling through the repaired building and out across the southern field. "I'll see," Kelsey said. It was not yes. Mara marked the date on the wall anyway. Kelsey arrived on a cool Monday morning in a rented hatchback with Memphis plates, 2 pairs of work gloves, and a pillow from her fold-out sofa. She stepped out wearing jeans too new for a farm and held the pillow toward Mara. "What is that?" "Evidence. I brought it so you can apologize directly." "To the pillow?" "The sofa has decided to move forward without you." Mara took the pillow. "Did you rent a car just to bring this?" "My car needs brakes." "You drove it last week." "Exactly. I learned something." They stood beside the repaired lane, smiling without quite touching. Kelsey looked past Mara at the pump house, the rows of marked pecan trees, and the south field now covered in a low green crop planted to hold the damaged soil. "It looks smaller than the photographs," she said. "That's because the water isn't trying to impress you. And you really live in that? The loft has electricity now. Bathrooms are electricity. Ruth Barn has a bathroom, 3 miles away. It builds planning skills." Kelsey looked at Mara's leg. The wound had closed into an angry pink seam below her knee. "Can I see it?" "You are seeing it, without the jeans." "Buy me dinner first." Kelsey's face folded. She stepped forward and hugged Mara hard enough to press the pillow between them. "You're an idiot," she said into Mara's shoulder. "That's been suggested. You could have lost your leg." "It was a shallow infection." "That is a sentence designed by an idiot." Mara hugged her back. Ruth's pickup appeared at the gate towing a pecan sweeper. She stopped beside them and leaned across the cab. "You must be Kelsey. You must be Ruth. I expected you to be taller." "Why?" Mara complains upward. Kelsey looked at Mara. "I like her." "You haven't worked for her yet." Harvest began with the least romantic machine Mara had ever seen. Craig arrived behind the wheel of an old tractor carrying a trunk shaker that looked like a padded metal claw. He stopped outside the gate and climbed down. "Can I bring it through?" he asked. The gate stood open. Nothing physically prevented him. Mara noticed the question anyway. "Stay off the soft ground near the channel," she said. "I know where it is. I know you know." Craig nodded and returned to the tractor. The shaker clamped around the first pecan trunk. The machine vibrated. The tree shivered from roots to crown, and nuts rattled onto the tarp spread beneath it. Leaves, twigs, and 2 startled squirrels came down with them. Kelsey stumbled backward. "Was that planned?" "Not the squirrels," Mara said. "Do they have to be returned?" "They're not equipment." Craig may disagree. By noon, the orchard floor was covered with moving people and small piles of nuts. Ruth drove the sweeper. Mara and Kelsey sorted damaged shells from good ones. Paula arrived carrying sandwiches and immediately changed into work boots she now kept in the trunk. Diane came last, in the old rubber boots and the blue shirt she had worn during the storm. She approached Mara without assuming a hug. Mara gave her one anyway. Diane's hands had healed, though pale lines from the blisters remained across her palms. She picked up a sorting bucket and joined Kelsey beneath the next tree. No one spoke about the letters. No one needed to for the silence to be different. The yield was modest. Several trees produced nothing. Nuts from the lowest ground were stained or hollow, and every bag had to be checked carefully for mold. Craig kept count on a piece of cardboard. "We'll cover diesel," he said near the end of the second day. "Maybe pruning costs?" "Taxes?" Mara asked. "Some? Retirement? If you retire somewhere that accepts pecans as shelter." Kelsey dropped another handful into the sorting tray. "I was told there was an inheritance." Craig looked at her. "There is. I'd like to speak to management. Mara's management." Kelsey glanced at her sister. "That explains the bathroom situation." The work continued for 4 days. Earl hauled the filled sacks to a processor that paid a fair price because Lenora had sold there for years. Joe brought lunch twice. Mateo repaired the orchard fence with posts Mara had received for rewiring his irrigation panel. No one called it charity. Every favor arrived attached to a remembered job, an owed afternoon, or an expectation that Mara would answer when their own machinery failed. She liked the honesty of that. Belonging, she discovered, came with invoices even when money never changed hands. Craig stayed through the final tree. As he unhooked the shaker, Mara brought him a bottle of water. "Thank you," she said. "It's Lenora's machine. Your machine." He took the water. "You could use it next year. What will it cost?" "Fuel. No family price?" "That is the family price." They stood beside the tractor. Across the orchard, Paula and Kelsey were attempting to fold a tarp while Ruth rejected each of their methods. Craig turned the unopened bottle between his hands. "I knew Lenora wrote to Diane," he said. Mara looked at him. "I didn't know Diane never gave you the letters. Would it have changed anything? I might have looked for you." "Why?" "To tell you about Thomas. You had 12 years after he died." Craig nodded. "Then I suppose I might not have." It was a poor apology and a good truth. Mara leaned against the tractor tire. "Did he ever mention me?" "Once." The orchard sounds seemed to draw away. "What did he say?" "Lenora was angry because he'd forgotten to send something. Money, I think. He said Diane wanted him out of your life anyway." Craig watched her carefully. "I don't know if that was true. It probably wasn't. He had a way of treating another person's anger like permission." Mara looked toward the pump house. "Anything else?" "He carried a photograph in his wallet for a while. You were sitting on a porch wearing a red shirt. I never knew where he got it." Mara remembered the photograph. Diane had mailed copies to several relatives when Mara was 6, hoping one would somehow reach him. For years, Diane claimed none had. The knowledge did not transform Thomas. A photograph in a wallet was not a phone call, a visit, or a name given honestly. It was only proof that his absence had required maintenance. "Thank you for telling me," she said. Craig nodded. Before leaving, he stopped at the gate and rehung the old chain on a fence post. The brass padlock remained open. The peason money paid the remaining taxes, the season's diesel, and part of the seed order for the rice rotation. It did not replace Mara's truck. It did not add plumbing to the pump house or erase what she owed Ruth for fuel and equipment wear. On paper, the inheritance still looked questionable. Kelsey studied those papers at Ruth's kitchen table. entering expenses into a spreadsheet while Mara and Ruth argued over the cost of repairing the south levee. "You spent how much on hose?" Kelsey asked. "Less than new hose. That isn't a number. Numbers are hostile when removed from context. You owe Ruth $1,200. Ruth looked up from her coffee. "She owes labor." "How much labor? Depends what breaks." Kelsey stared at her. "Do farms have budgets?" "Yes," Ruth said. "We ignore them in an organized manner." Later, Mara and Kelsey walked the orchard together. Wind moved through the thinning leaves. The surviving trees still wore their small painted marks. "I thought you were choosing this place over us," Kelsey said. Mara nudged a fallen branch with her boot. "I did choose it. That isn't the comforting answer. I'm trying to stop giving those." Kelsey slipped her hands into her jacket pockets. "When you asked for money, it felt like all the things I'd already done didn't count. They counted. You didn't act like it. I was scared and ashamed. You usually make jokes when you're ashamed. That can't be true." "I'm very funny." Kelsey gave her a tired look. Mara stopped beneath one of the questionable trees Ruth had refused to declare dead. New leaves had appeared on one side. "You gave me somewhere to go when I had nowhere," she said. "I turned it into a complaint because needing you made me feel small." Kelsey looked up at the recovering branches. "Mom taught us that," she said. "Make the other person wrong before they notice you need them." Mara thought of Diane folding grocery bags into hard squares. "I'm trying to unlearn it. Good. Your complaints about my towels were inaccurate. You fold them too wide for the cabinet. See? No progress." They returned to the pump house, laughing. Paula's pickup was parked outside. A scarred oak table lay in the bed. Mara stopped. "What is that?" "You asked if there was anything from the farmhouse I'd let you have," Paula said. "I said the kitchen table. I know. I was being rude. You were specific." Craig agreed. The table had belonged to Lenora for 40 years. Diane remembered packing vegetables on it during her first summer at the farm. Thomas had repaired one leg with 2 mismatched bolts. Knife marks crossed the surface, and a pale circle showed where a hot pan had once burned through the finish. It took all 4 women and Ruth's tractor lift to maneuver it through the widened pump house door. They set it on the cleaned concrete floor where the water had once stood 4 feet deep. Mara had repaired the wiring and installed lights beneath the loft. She had painted the walls but left the waterline visible, not as decoration. Paint was expensive, and she had run out. Paula stepped back from the table. "It looks strange here." "It always looks strange," Diane said. Lenora hated furniture shopping. Did she? She hated being sold anything. Ruth ran her palm over the scratched surface. She would object to this placement. "Why?" Mara asked. "It blocks the shortest route to the tools. Then it's perfect." They made dinner because moving the table had taken the rest of the afternoon, and no one wanted to drive into town. Diane cooked chicken in Ruth's kitchen. Kelsey brought potatoes. Paula produced 2 bottles of wine she claimed had been waiting in her trunk for an occasion better than accounting. Craig delivered 6 chairs from the farmhouse but declined to stay. "I have an irrigation motor making a sound," he said. Mara looked at him. "What kind of sound?" "The expensive kind." "I'll come tomorrow." He nodded and left 1 extra chair at the end of the table. The 5 women ate beneath the new lights while the main pump cycled in the room beyond them. Its vibration traveled faintly through the concrete and into the table legs. They talked about the rice plan, the seed order, Kelsey's brakes, and whether Mara could build a shower without accidentally creating a second flood. Ruth said she could not. Mara said this was why Ruth had no friends. Diane laughed again. The extra chair remained empty. Halfway through dinner, Diane reached for the salt and stopped. "Lenora would say these potatoes are bland." Kelsey looked at her. Paula lowered her glass. Diane spoke the name without tightening around it, then passed the salt to Mara. Mara sprinkled it over her plate and set the shaker beside the empty chair. Outside, the drainage channel moved steadily beneath the dark pecan trees. No storm pressed against the walls. No one was asking Mara to sell. She rested one hand on Lenora's scarred table. "Pass the chicken," she said.